across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are. Good evening and welcome to the Political Asylum right here on Talk. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan and I'll be with you all the way to 10 o'clock. Stand by for 3 full throttle hours of news, views and topical debate. Get stuck in, get on the phone and call me on 0344 499 1000 or WhatsApp voice note me on the same number and I promise to play your message out. That's 0344 499 1000. It is Tuesday, June the 10th. Here's what's coming up. A vicious thug who beat his girlfriend's 2 pet cats to death walks free from court after a joke judge decided that to send him to jail would be too distressing for his family. He got a 500 quid fine. Another fine example of the punishment grotesquely not fitting the crime. We need to do something about our approach to animal cruelty in this country. We really do. And this is the case that must make us change our approach. 0344 499 1000. In other news, the weirdness of Westminster rears its ugly, stupid head as Keir and Rachel spend the day telling lies that no one believes. Everyone knows that this doziest of duos completely screwed up with their cruel and ridiculously unnecessary scrapping of the winter fuel allowance. Now, after their utterly humiliating U-turn, Dumb and Dumber are going round saying it's all going according to plan, and phew, thank goodness Rachel from Accounts got the economy back into such great shape they can afford to no longer freeze pensioners to death. Why don't they just stop embarrassing themselves, admit they ballsed it up in spades and apologise for their stupefying, self-harming incompetence? 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, having taken £800 million of our cash to stand and watch migrants leaving for Britain, the French are demanding more money to actually try to stop the boats. And it looks like hopeless Home Secretary Yvette Cooper is going to cough up. Isn't that special? How long is this sick comedy going to go on for? 0344 499 1000. Also tonight, Labour's obsession with issuing everyone in Britain with ID cards. Do you fancy Tony Blair's dream of turning Britain into a papers, please society? 0344 499 1000. Blair wants to do it because it's all about control. Makes the job easier for the government. Tough. You know, we should, in my view, say no. Just say no to ID cards. Plus, the shocking truth about atrocious Attorney General Lord Richard Hermer and his criminal friend. Also, I'm asking the question, if the royals are supposed to be politically neutral, why are King Charles and especially Prince William allowed to preach their hardline views on climate change? Meanwhile, astonishing claims that the Egyptian pyramids sit on top of a lost city beneath the desert sand. You won't want to miss that. And finally, as talk presenter David Bull, Dr. David Bull, is appointed Reform UK's new chairman. What's the future for Nigel Farage's advancing political party? I'll ask David's predecessor, Zia Youssef, who quit the job last week, what he thinks. So congratulations to David Bull. We're going to miss you on Weekend Breakfast. But good luck with your new career. It's going to be tough, but it's going to be exciting. Good luck, David. All that and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Tuesday night together. And Tuesday is Rod Little night. He is, right, let's go. He is the columnist for The Sun, for the Sunday Times, for The Spectator, and also a presenter on the Times Radio, our sister station, he presents the Saturday morning show from 10 until 1 p.m. I highly recommend it. I believe he's also now the Sunday Times TV critic. Do you ever get any sort of like spare moments to, I don't know, breathe or drink?
No, I did have to ask my editor a couple of years ago if I could take 10 minutes out to go to the lavatory.
But he said no.
Hurry up.
Hurry up, I've got another role for you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Listen, Rod, let's kick off tonight. It's going off piece, but it enraged me, this story, and I think it does feed into an increasing problem we have with our ridiculous judges. This is the story of a little toe rag called James Higginson, 20 years old. He systematically beat his girlfriend's 2 pet cats to death. They were called Tiggy and Sushi. He beat them while she was at work throughout the summer of 2023. There was a 3rd cat that he was in the process of beating to death, which was luckily seized by the RSPCA and taken to the vets with a very swollen face in the nick of time. Now, the guy's girlfriend, she was extremely upset by what he did, and so her name is Caitlin Morley. So she sort of reported him, and the authorities and the police and the RSPCA went to great lengths to pursue this case, to their credit, to the extent they exhumed these 2 cats to check how the injuries they'd received, and apparently he'd been beating them with a blunt instrument. The neighbours could hear him while he was torturing these poor animals, shouting, "How do you like that, you little bitch?" to some poor little cat. So he goes into court this week, Bournemouth Crown Court. To cut a long story short, he got a 500 quid fine. A 500 quid fine. He got a 15-month suspended prison sentence. They're a waste of time. When you get a suspended prison sentence, it means they've let you off. And he's also been banned from owning animals for 20 years. But basically, a 500 quid fine because the judge said, A, when you committed these crimes 2 years ago, when you were just 18, you were suffering from mental health issues. Of course, and also, here's the doozy: the judge demurred from sending him to jail because to do so would cause his family distress. Look, what I say is, I mean, you know, I'm a bit of an absolutist on this. You know, what this guy did was murdered these poor little animals, these poor little cats. He murdered them. Now, if he murdered 2 babies, they'd lock him up, life imprisonment, throw the key away. But because it's cats, because it's animals, we don't seem too bothered by this. We hardly ever send anyone to jail for cruelty to animals. And I think in cases like this, we should recalibrate our approach. We should start saying this is pretty much as bad as beating up a defenceless person. And we should start punishing these people properly. But this judge, mental health issues, not actually specified, by the way, just, you know, the general spectre of them introduced into the courtroom. And also, of course, that to put him inside would upset his family. I mean, what a ridiculous decision by this judge. And also, he needs to be spoken to, the judge himself. Another one of these overly lenient, no doubt, Guardian reading idiots. But also, just as a nation, we've got to, I think, rethink the way we approach people who are horrifically cruel to animals and stop treating it like it's a minor offence, because that's what we do at the moment.
I agree with you, apart from cats, as it happens. But in general...
Don't ruin the story.
I've ruined the story. Cats are a different issue. Actually, it's not cats, it's cat owners who I have a problem with.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, you're absolutely right. Number one, the judge is an idiot. But number two, he's only doing what, in general, we do in this country, which is we claim to be animal lovers, but take no no action whatsoever against people who abuse, mistreat, and kill animals. I mean, it's a kind of schizophrenic approach to animals, and it's been like that for so long. And the RSPCA, bless them, spend so much of their time doing the police's work for them and tracking down these sorts of crimes, and indeed trying to stop fox hunts. You know, the RSPCA does all that work. The police are only happy when they're turning up mob-handed outside your house because you happen to have suggested that there might be a connection between terrorism and Islamism, and then they'll be round like the drop of a hat. You know, but it's true entirely that crimes against animals are not taken seriously. Acts of cruelty are not taken seriously. Up here where I am in the North Pennines, the continued murder of some of our most beautiful birds of prey, the raptors, the hen harriers, the red kites, the peregrine falcons, all of which have been killed on the moors just up from me, never prosecuted. You never comes to court.
What do you mean? People shoot them, or?
Well, it's the grouse landowners.
Oh, right, yeah.
Via the gamekeepers. And, you know, I spoke to a gamekeeper a year or so ago and said, what percentage of these creatures do you aim to get rid of? And he said 100%. You're going to get rid of 100% of them. So that's all raptors, all of them. All raptors. And then foxes, badgers, stoats, weasels, the lot. Just a lot. And so you have my house here where I am with a garden overrun with rabbits because there are no predators.
See, what you said about the RSPCA, Rod, the system is this, and this is something we have to think about. The system is that the police don't investigate animal cruelty cases. They hand them over to the RSPCA.
Why do they?
Because that is the system. So animal cruelty cases. I know it's rubbish, I think, but the RSPCA handle all animal cruelty cases and prosecute them in court, and I think they're rather overrun with this. And again, it's an indication that we don't treat cruelty to animals, sometimes egregious cruelty, like we're talking about here. We don't treat it seriously. Oh, that's not worth wasting the police's time with. And here's another thing about this guy, this awful toe rag, this little James Higginson. He's got 3 other convictions involving 6 separate offences, and one of them was beating up his girlfriend. Domestic violence against his girlfriend, the poor girl who owns the cats. Now, I'll tell you about this guy, James Higginson. He will offend again, and the next time, his next violence offence, I'll tell you, will probably not be animals. It won't be his girlfriend. It will be much, much more serious.
Yeah. No, I'm sure that's right. And this kind of leniency gets us into trouble further down the line every day. Quite clearly, you know, he's a wrong 'un. It is wrong, of course, to label people simply, you know, we're all better than our worst possible act. But Mr. Higginson, whatever his name
is, James Higginson,
has committed so many foul acts that I think we can pretty much put a finger on him, can't we? You know, we know what it's like. And you're right, there's also a link between people who abuse animals and people who abuse human beings. The more likely you are, if you've abused an animal, the more likely it is that you're going to abuse a human being as well. So there is that connection there too.
Yeah.
And so we've got to get all these things into a row, and we get them all wrong. We've got to take animal cruelty far more seriously. We've got to be less lenient in our courts, and somehow judges have got to get it into their heads. Magistrates and judges have got to remember that they are there to protect the public. They are not there to look after the sensibilities of a criminal's family. You know, that's the other thing which comes up time and time again. They are there to protect us, not to look after the perpetrator.
Yeah, and you're so right in this case. This guy Higginson, He should have definitely been banged up and told by the judge, there's a pattern of behaviour developing here, and I'm going to send you to jail to make you reflect on what you've been doing.
Yeah, I don't know that it would have worked.
But look, it's worth a try, Rod. It's a lot better solution to the Higginson problem than just saying, here's a 500 quid fine, go and hug your mum and cry outside court, which is what he did. He collapsed with relief onto a bollard and was photographed in the papers today, weeping away with sheer relief.
Well, look, if we think that prison isn't the answer, and sometimes it isn't the answer, then make what they do meaningful and fitting the crime. So, for example, maybe you should do, 400 hours unpaid work for the RSPCA and begin to learn, or for Battersea Dogs Home, or for something like that. Start imposing sentences which have a meaning to the defendant, as well as having some retributional effect as well.
Yeah. I can give you now the name of the judge, the recorder, Patrick Mason. This was last Friday. So this is what he told this bloke Higginson, who used a blunt instrument, apparently, to systematically beat these poor little things to death. The neighbours could hear them screaming in agony and him shouting at them, calling them stupid little bitches and things like that. So the recorder, Patrick Mason, said, "You should be ashamed of yourself." He said, "Everybody who has a pet knows that it should be a source of pleasure to us. You should be thoroughly ashamed of yourself for doing something like that."
What an absolute idiot. I bet he's a public school boy.
Yeah. He said, "But at the age of 18, you were not able to handle your emotions in a way that someone much more grown up would do, which, given your mental health problems, that's perhaps not surprising."
What mental health problems?
Oh, I don't know. It'll be the mental health problems that every single scrote who ends up in the dock says that they've got. Every single two-bit defence lawyer tells. My client has suffered a number of mental health issues over the years, Your Honour, and so on and so forth. It is disgraceful, and poor Caitlin Morley just said he should have been banged up. This is a disgrace. I agree. And I want people to let me know what you think about this. We've got to do something about this.
We have.
We've got to treat cruelty to animals as a serious crime, not something that you tap someone over the wrist and give them a 500 quid fine for. This is an outrage, and James Higginson, he's a danger to society. He will commit more violent offences.
He's probably not as much a danger to society as Patrick Mason, because he's going to be back. He's going to be back next week, sitting in, on a case. And I've just seen a photograph of him. I thought at first it was Harry Enfield doing Tim Nice but Dim, but it wasn't. And we've got to get to grips with our judiciary as well. We've talked about this for weeks, Kev.
Yeah.
That whether it's adjudicating on asylum seekers or dealing with horrible creatures like James Higginson, they've got to be aware that their duty is to uphold the law and to protect the rest of us, including our animals.
Absolutely. And the immigration judges, we've got to get hold of them as well and try and knock some sense into them. But at the moment, we are stuck in a really bad predicament that our judiciary are just a bunch of lenient left-wing morons. They really are. So you're right, and they're endangering the decent people of this country. Talking about terrible people, when we come back, we're going to talk about Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer, so stick around, Rod.
Rachel Reeves woke up one morning and decided to pick a fight with the nation's pensioners, exposing them to a cold, bleak winter. And now we've seen the inevitable U-turn. She should apologise. And most importantly, she needs to say how she is going to fund. We were told by Lucy Powell that if they hadn't made this decision, there was going to be a run on the pound, all sorts of nonsense. But she did not yesterday say that how she's going to pay for it. This autumn, she's going to come back for more of your money, your savings, your wages and your pension.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with prolific columnist Rod Liddle. Rod, let's talk about Rachel and Keir, shall we? I want to talk about the sort of absurd performative nature of, you know, weird Westminster's ongoing theatre of the absurd. I mean, so yesterday, Rachel from Accounts, Rachel from Complaints, has to stage this complete U-turn. And don't make any mistake here. This is a total U-turn. Whatever they say, what they're going to do now is pay every pensioner in the country the £300 winter fuel allowance. They then, using weasel words, say, oh, those over £35,000 will get it back when they do their tax returns. But the point is, what we're doing here is we're going back to exactly what the system was before Keir and Rachel, in their infinite lack of wisdom, axed the winter fuel allowance. Now, for the past day now, we've been watching these two absurd people sort of, I wouldn't say gaslighting the public because no one's believing them, telling these ludicrous lies to us that no one in the entire country believes a word of. Exactly, we've been able, because I've stabilised the economy and got the economy into such good shape, we can now afford to pay the pensioners the winter fuel allowance. I mean, this is not true. In fact, it's absurdly the opposite of true. Now, I know it's politics and I know they've got to do spin and all that, but there's something... It's getting a bit absurd with this lot, isn't it? Keir and Rachel in particular. Just constantly just telling us little boy lies. You know, they're like a kid who turns up and hasn't done his homework. Sorry, sir, I missed the bus. Sorry, sir, I dropped my satchel or something. It's pathetic. And everybody knows. Do we have to go through this nonsense? Couldn't they just, for once in their craven lives, say, listen, we got that a bit wrong. It's upset everybody. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring back the winter fuel allowance, and we're a bit sorry about that. Sorry we did that. If they did that, they get so much more mileage. But they are in the clutches of their self-styled brilliant spin doctors who are complete idiots, who couldn't spin plates. And off they go, staring us in the face from the TV screens, telling us silly, barefaced lies. It's a weird spectacle, isn't it?
It is. I remember back in the Tony Blair government, David Blunkett, when he was Home Secretary, announced some policy, and then 3 months later, he retracted it, and we all said, "Oh, you've got it wrong, haven't you? You've got it wrong. You've got it wrong." And he said, "Yes, yes, I got it wrong, completely wrong. Very sorry." And that's why David Blunkett is a class act, and you know, and why I think Rachel Reeves is a bad person. I think
you're right. I think that is emerging. I think she really is. Keir Starmer is bad, but I don't think you could probably classify him as a person. He's a sort of AI robot that went wrong, a malfunctioning AI robot. But they're both, I mean, Andrew Neil wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago in the Mail saying, it was quite sort of trenchant. He said, 55 years I've been covering British politics. And in all those years, I always recoiled, like most political journalists, from actually saying the Prime Minister's a liar, the Chancellor of the Exchequer's a liar. You always recoiled from that because they were always careful not to lie, actually. I mean, they used...
Even Boris.
Yeah, well, no, let's actually, no. Let's not get ridiculous. But they used to, in the good old days, they used to be circuitous, didn't they? If they needed to not tell you the truth, they'd find a way of doing it without actually lying to your face. These two, this government, Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, as Andrew Neil said, he said, I've never come across this ever before. These two people, this government, are gaslighting the nation of Britain on an epic scale. They lie and they lie and they lie. This is unprecedented, the amount of lying this government's doing.
Yes, though you could, in fairness, Kev, you could argue that the Conservative government set a bit of a precedent for the whole thing, with Boris and so on. But yes, you're right. I mean, certainly on domestic issues, Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have been pretty disgraceful. And Reeves particularly, there hasn't been you will never get a word of contrition out of that awful woman. She will never say, yes, my first budget wrecked what was becoming a promising economy. And that's the truth. Yeah. It wrecked it by putting the national insurance on all the small to medium enterprises which create the wealth for this country, when the stupid woman had said that her priority was growth. So, I mean, what a moron. And I don't think that's too strong a word either. And we've had more of it. I would have had more respect for them if they'd not reintroduce the winter fuel payments.
I think I agree with you. I'm glad they have, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
At least that stick to your guns, as it were. But as you quite rightly say,
not to apologise.
Yeah. There could be some. I mean, these politicians have always had this problem with saying sorry. They think that's a sign of weakness. But she was asked constantly, which has been all through today, will you apologise, will you apologise? And not only is she's basically just not addressed that, gone, so would you apologise, Rachel? The economy is now in such a good state that I am able, in other words, not answering the question.
The economy is worse now than it was then.
I know.
That's the point. She wrecked the economy.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, I have more sympathy for the Labour Party than you do, Kev. Probably because I was in it for 40 odd years. But if this government is going to get back on track, Reeves has got to go, Miliband has got to go, and I would suggest that paddling without water wings in the English Channel, Yvette has got to go as well. And then you might be on the right tracks.
Yeah, I read in the Telegraph today that Yvette Cooper's supposed to be on resignation watch because Rachel won't give her enough money for the Home Office. And you know what Yvette Cooper wants more money for? So she should give the French more money.
To bribe the French.
To paddle into the Channel.
Yes, that's right.
So we've given the French, right, over quite a few years, £800 million, bolstered 2 years and 3 months ago by Rishi, who handed them a massive £500 million, right? So they've had £800 million. And it now turns out that Yvette Cooper wants to extend the deal, and she needs more money because the French are saying, well, you didn't tell us you actually want us to stop the boats. Oh, you actually want us to go into the sea and intercept the... Well, that is going to cost you more money. So we've given them £800 million for £800 million for absolutely nothing, and now they want more money just to paddle into the sea. And Yvette Cooper thinks that's a good deal.
Frankly, Kev, I don't blame the French one bit. You know, look, there are morons over there. You take them for everything they have got.
Yeah.
You know, that's just it's been a farrago of defeat and defeat and defeat on the economy, on migration, on the Chagos Islands, you know, on sentencing. It's getting very, very bad indeed. It's remarkable that they're still on, you know, 23, 24% in the polls, frankly.
And that's got to fall. So what are you going to lead on in the Sun this week, Rod?
Well, I might have a look at Mr. Higginson, actually. He's quite interesting.
Yeah, you should. That actually, do bring it to a wider audience, because but I think it's a more important. I mean, it's a horrible example of cruelty, but it raises the issue of us, you know, an alleged nation of animal lovers, in the way that we punish people who are inordinately cruel to animals. We do not display any love for animals whatsoever, and we've got to do something about it. Rod, great to talk to you. Look forward to your various columns, and we'll talk again next week. Rod Liddle there, columnist at The Sun, Sunday Times, The Spectator, presenter of Times Radio's Saturday morning show from 10 until 1 p.m, 10 a.m. until 1 p.m, and he's also The Sunday Times' TV critic as well. He sometimes sticks a broom up his backside so he can sweep the floor at the same time. He's doing all these jobs. When we come back, we'll talk to James Price, former Conservative advisor. That next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go straight over to my next guest. He is former Conservative Special Advisor James Price. Welcome, James.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm very, very well. Now, I was just talking to Rod Liddle about this, but let's expand on it because it is the height of absurdity. So we only really learned a couple of weeks ago that having effectively given the French over the years £800 million to patrol their own beaches and stop the boats. This was supercharged 2 years and 3 months ago when Rishi Sunak handed Macron a cheque for £500 million. So that was the biggest instalment. But altogether, over the years, we've given the French £800 million to patrol their own beaches and stop the boats. It was only a couple of weeks ago that we learned that £800 million that we paid them did not encompass them actually entering the water. So we gave them £800 million for them to stand on the sand on the beaches and watch the boats leave. So A couple of weeks ago, I think it was John Healey, the Defence Secretary, was on the media round. This is last weekend, I think. So, well, that's right. It was after the 1,195 migrants came over on 2 Saturdays ago. John Healey doing the round the next day. He's like, yes, it's terrible. It's terrible. We lost control of our borders, no doubt about it. But I've got a brilliant announcement to make. The French have agreed to paddle in the Channel. And then we learn. Hey, whoa! Don't you laugh? They've actually potentially agreed to go as far as 300 metres out to stop these boats leaving. My initial response to that was, well, what about 10.5 miles? In other words, they're half of the 21-mile wide English Channel. Why 300 metres? What about 10.5 miles? But anyway, 300 metres. We'll take it, I suppose. It's better than not going in the sea at all. And now what do we learn? Yes, they've said, yes, we are possibly prepared to get into the sea 300 metres. But that is going to cost you more money. Now, it's like, hang on a second, what was all the rest of the money for? You want more money to paddle in the sea, and it gets worse. Yvette Cooper, this deal was supposed to end next year. Yvette Cooper is keen to extend this arrangement, this agreement with the French until 2027, and is keen to hand them more money. Could you stop the world, please, James, because it's gone mad and I want to get off. This is unbelievable, isn't it?
I mean, we're laughing, but it isn't really funny, is it? I mean, the English Channel that has protected us against, the Spanish Armada, against Napoleon, against Hitler, and now we can't even stop a bunch of, inbred criminals from coming over in dinghies, and we're trying to pay in vain the French to stop us, as you say. It's just a law. It isn't actually funny, right? I mean, this is a genuinely quite serious threat to our national security. We saw a few weeks ago the Iranians who were plotting terrorist attacks here. Several of them came over on small boats. And of course, when they got here, what else did we do? We put them up in migrant hotels as well, and we paid for them to have mobile phones and to have hot meals and all the rest of it, whilst they were sat in those hotels plotting terror attacks against the British people, against all the people who are watching and listening to this programme this evening. This is absolutely insane. And I take people back to Dominic Cummings, who may not be everybody's cup of tea, but in my experience of working for him, was right about pretty much everything. And he said recently something that was really eye-opening about this, which is the fact that if we wanted to, given that we still have, 2 bloody great big aircraft carriers and large enough navy, and, we are one of the world's biggest economies, we have nuclear weapons and all these amazing, incredible things that the British state possesses and should be able to do. Not that I'm sadly suggesting nuking the French coastline, but that we could quite easily, obviously stop these morons in the dinghies if we wanted to. You send some special forces, you send the special boat service or whoever it may be out, and could quite easily stop this. And we know as well that we could get the Rwanda scheme going again or something like that and send them off into the arse end of nowhere, which is what the French are about to start doing, of course, in a bit of South America that France still owns, where they're building a great big prison to stick all of their terrorists and wrong-uns very far from the French mainland. And we could do that very easily. Why don't we do it? We don't do it because our legal system won't allow it. And in extremis, as Dominic Cummings has pointed out, and he's right about this, the Prime Minister ordering the Royal Navy to stop this complete madness could see the Cabinet Secretary, the man in charge of the deep state, of the civil service, call the police and have the Prime Minister arrested for breaking various pieces of human rights law. That's the mess that we're really in. That's the root of this insanity.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. We have a legal system that is the enemy of decisive action about this escalating crisis.
The enemy of the people at this point, I'm afraid.
Yeah, very, very much so. But we also have a government. In fact, we have a House of Commons. It doesn't necessarily only involve Labour politicians. This involves politicians of all colours, all across the House. We have a House of Commons full of MPs who have no resolve about this whatsoever, and rather than confront it in a realistic and difficult way, which is what we should do. They'd rather sort of stick their fingers in the air, go la 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 la, let's worry about human rights, they're human beings, and so on and so forth. Well, this country is full of human beings. They're called British citizens, and their safety is being put at risk by this ongoing invasion of the unknowns. We don't know who these people are. Also, this country is being put at risk by the amount of money this is costing us, which is astronomical. It is destroying our economy, and it is causing all sorts of untold cultural problems. So that is why we should have a body politic, particularly a government who's prepared to say, as Dominic Cummings suggested, look, it's time, we've got to get real here, we've got to get decisive, turn the boats round, detain and deport, take them to an island, something to change what's going on now, because this is getting worse and worse and worse, and it is putting this country in peril. But what do? Nothing. In a way, I think, James, they hide behind the difficult legalities that you were talking about, and this is not good enough. Well, we are in trouble here. We are in deep trouble, and we have a government and a set of politicians who just would rather ignore it.
Do you know, Kev, I think you make a great point about this idea that they're just scared of these things, and we've seen this across, frankly, all of the British state, across multiple governments of all colours, red, blue, whatever else may come next. And I think it is this idea that people are scared of having power. Elected politicians are scared of having power. Ministers are scared of having power. And in that sort of timidity, the civil service and the regulators and the quangos and the deep state and all these things have come flooding in. But of course, these are the people, as you say, who care more about human rights legislation. The Prime Minister certainly does. He's built his whole career on this idea that international law is much more important than plebeian British law or national law in any way, shape or form. I think you're dead right about that. And I think, look, in addition to the hordes of sound patriotic right-wingers like you and me who listen to this channel, I'm sure there are lots of centre of the road and lefty people who listen as well. And I was talking to someone in my family about this as well, whom I love dearly, but unlike me is not a sound patriotic right-winger. And they have a lot of compassion for these people. And that's a lovely thing. I wish I could be as gentle and caring and open-minded that each and every one of these people coming over was William Shakespeare or was Isaac Newton or John Locke or whoever it may be, and they contribute huge amounts. I don't think that's true, by the way. And I think that this kind of misplaced compassion is also driving us to rack and ruin. It's the reason why there are so many women and children who are off in migrant camps in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Syria, and other benighted parts of the world, that Britain cannot help because these young, fit, fighting-age men are coming over, leaving the women and children behind, of course, and coming over here seeking, at best, a job, and at worst, benefits for us. And the only politician I can think of, the only elected politician who's actually stuck his neck out and done something about this, or tried to, is the Conservative Party's Robert Jenrick, who was the immigration minister, of course, under Rishi. And he laid out a plan. He got kind of radicalised, I think, by being in the Home Office, where you spend all day dealing with foreign criminals and rapists and paedophiles and criminal gangsters and the worst kind of scum on earth. And he went to Rishi Sunak and he said, look, what you're doing isn't enough. Here's the stuff you're going to actually need to do to make a difference. And it's derogating from things like the European Convention on Human Rights and Tony Blair's so-called Human Rights Act. And Rishi Sunak wasn't willing to do anything about it. And so what did Rob Jenrick do? He quit and he gave up the easy ministerial life. And that's why I think he's got so much credibility in this conversation now, because he actually will clear-eyed look at the problem and understands what is required in order to secure our borders and keep the British people safe.
You're so right, James, and Jenrick is right. And the last two Prime Ministers, Sunak and now Starmer, they cowered away from this entire issue and hid behind ludicrous slogans. You know, Rishi Sunak standing behind those lecterns, stop the boats. Keir Starmer, smash the gangs. It's just not good enough. Well, as I say, this is really serious. This country is in danger because of this, and we have a set of politicians who aren't prepared to do anything about it, and that is lamentable. Let me know what you think, folks. 03444991000. Talking of lamentable, when we come back, James, I want to talk to you about Labour's obsession with ID cards. They really want to turn this nation into a papers, please society. What do you think about that? 03444991000. We'll talk about that after this break.
Rachel Reeves woke up one morning and decided to pick a fight with the nation's pensioners, exposing them to a cold, bleak winter. And now we've seen the inevitable U-turn. She should apologise. And most importantly, she needs to say how she is going to fund. We were told by Lucy Powell that if they hadn't made this decision, there was going to be a run on the pound, all sorts of nonsense. But she did not yesterday say that how she's going to pay for it. This autumn, she's going to come back for more of your money, your savings, your wages and your pension.
So on the one hand, we keep hiking up energy prices with this religion of net zero, this lunatic end of times religion, which says that unless we cut carbon by a certain amount in 10 years, we're all going to fry in an apocalypse. Completely untrue. So they've devoted themselves to this cult, which has the effect of
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with former Conservative Special Advisor and now political commentator James Price. James, Labour has for a long time had an obsession with ID cards. Lord David Blunkett, one of Labour's better men, if you ask me, I've got quite a lot of time for him, but he's obsessed with ID cards. Barely a day goes past without him writing for some newspaper. It's time for ID cards. You know, he had a big piece in the Mail on Sunday, just gone, you know, saying ID cards now are a no-brainer, no-brainer. Tony Blair is fixated on them. We've got to have ID cards, we've got to. It's 21st century. And Blair's been banging on about this. They were going on about this back in the noughties during Blair's government. It's a long-term obsession of Labour's that all people in Britain, British citizens, British residents, should be issued with an ID card. Now, their new excuse, their new reason for this, to try and rack up the pressure is, look, we could solve the migrant crisis if only everyone had ID cards. No, we couldn't, by the way. They're just using the migrant crisis as their latest excuse to try to persuade us to have ID cards. Now, I can see that in many ways this would help, you know, help a government it will make life easier for a government. But I don't think that we as a people should capitulate. We have to say to our governments, our successive governments, I know us not having ID cards makes life more difficult for you, makes it more difficult for you, the Labour government, to control us, the people, but frankly, you're going to have to like it and lump it. We don't want ID cards, and we do not want to live in a papers, please society where people can pull you up and say, show me your ID card, papers, please. I get the reasons for it. I mean, there are logical reasons for it, but culturally, emotionally, it's just not British. And I think we must say no to Labour. We must say no to Blunkett. We must say no to Blair. No ID cards for this country.
Yeah, you're right in the sense that this stuff it feels instinctively deeply un-British. I think that's a really important point. But after many years of wonderful friendship, I'm worried that I might be about to find more than a fag paper between you and I, because even I've had my head turned ever so slightly by this idea, for the reasons that these people are now finally using, about the scale of the migrant crisis. I don't like it to be the case that we'd have to do any of this stuff, but I do think that something is necessary in order to get a grip with it. Now, of course, the good answer of this is that we can just round up all of these people, we can deport them, we can stop them from coming here in the first place and all the rest of it. It's why the same reason why the various kinds of banning of the burqa and of halal food and all these sorts of things. You don't want to have to tell people how to dress and what to eat and what not to eat and things. But what you want to do is to have everybody who's integrated into the British way of life, so you don't need to worry about this sort of stuff. I almost think perhaps in a way a compromise would be, in a naive, wonderful world, that you do ID cards for 5 years or something and then you get rid of it. But of course, as Ronald Reagan once said, there's nothing so permanent as a temporary government programme, right?
It's true. It's true. Now, in the States, having lived there, of course, their system is the driving licence. So even if you can't drive, you're supposed to have a driving licence in America. But at the same time, if a copper says to you, show me your driving licence, show me your ID if you like, as an American, you're able to say, no, I don't want to. So it's not compulsory over there. They have a sort of an ID card system, but not the kind that I think Blunkett and Blair have in mind. Now, I can see, but what worries me about what you're saying, as I say, if you're going to persuade me, I suppose the migrant crisis, the potential solution of the migrant crisis is a powerful argument. But what worries me about that is, if we had ID cards and go, well, this is obviously an illegal migrant because he hasn't got an ID card, they would be entirely forgeable, and there'd soon be a thriving business in forged fake ID cards. So I don't think necessarily they're the passport to solving the migrant crisis.
I like the pun there, being the passport to solving it. Very droll.
That's why I get the small. That's why I get the small bucks.
Exactly right. Weirdly, and it was Talk Zone and occasional contributor Harry Cole talking about this today, just before he jet sets off to his fancy new gig in the United States, where he got himself a new passport. And actually, I've done it recently. And the passport service has gone from being absolutely dreadful to being perhaps the best run bit of the British state. So we can do some of these things well.
Can I just interrupt you for a second? I recently had to get a driving licence. Brilliant. But about 2 days, they said it maybe 5 days, was there in 2 days. Totally efficient. So something's going on somewhere. So credit where it's due, but go on.
Exactly. And I think that what this means is that whilst in the noughties under Blair, a lot of people listening will remember their attempts to do fancy new IT systems for the healthcare service, and all this, and it never worked and never went right. Now I think the technology really is there to be able to do this, which is both exciting. You look at somewhere like Estonia, where they save something like 5 whole days every single year because their online portal is so good, and they can vote online and they can order stuff online and all sorts. And it's really good because they've got the tech capabilities, because they're staring down the barrel of the evil Russians that they're dealing with. But it's also scary because, as you say, Kev, if we gave the state this kind of power and we gave the state a big list of everybody and where they live and what they're doing all the time, that is a serious threat to freedom. And I think perhaps the only way that we could square this circle is with this exciting kind of sexy new technology called the blockchain, which is what cryptocurrencies sort of live on. And I think that whilst it sounds a little bit out there and a bit futuristic for now, I think that given how much technology is changing, the idea that you can keep someone's identity, you can keep some piece of information on the blockchain, the idea of which is that it's decentralized in networks all around the world and not held in any one, say, government mainframe, that's the kind of technology we might need to use. An example of this is that AI is now so good, right? They could generate a conversation between you and me where we're saying, Greta's really great, I love paying taxes and all this sort of stuff. And people might think, oh, actually, God, they both had lobotomies and this is real. And actually, if we
You're
have
probably thinking that already, but good point. Yeah.
But if we have this show and we put a stamp of it on this idea of the blockchain, people would know that this is the only legitimate version of it. Maybe that's some way we can square the circle, kick out all the people that shouldn't be here and not ruin our ancient English liberty.
Yeah, I know, you know, I'm available for debate on this, but what worries me about the Blunkets and particularly the Blairs of this world, Blair wants ID cards only for one reason: control.
Power, exactly.
Power and control. And if we are going to have any form of ID card, we have to somehow make sure that the socialists mismanaging this country aren't able to use these ID cards for their nefarious purposes, which is to corral us and to control us. That's why Blair wants it. It's control over the people. And that's what worries me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is the problem, isn't it? Socialism is the very definition of the reason why we can't have any nice things, because you can't trust the socialists in power on this. And of course, the nice solution would be you never need ID cards because everything already works marvelously well. The kind of systems that are already in place work really well. And you don't have, tens of thousands of fighting age men coming over on small dinghies that our government won't let us stop every year, right? If we can sort out the kind of, pardon the pun again, upstream problems of some of this stuff, we wouldn't need to worry about it. But my fear is that things have got so bad now, that hour is so late, that we're going to have to start looking at things that don't feel very nice and cuddly and liberal in order to fix them. The real challenge would be, you have those sorts of powers in the short term, can we get rid of it? The state took a lot of powers in World War II in order to win the war, and then Friedrich Hayek wrote a great book called The Road to Serfdom that warned, if you...
Gotta go. We gotta go, James. James Price there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is hour 2 of tonight's Political Asylum. We had to cut James Price short in mid-sentence there. He was just about to get onto some intellectual book, so we probably left him at the right time. But anyway, sorry to cut him off there, but that was James Price, obviously. Sometimes timing gets difficult on these shows. So now, for the next hour, though, we will, in half an hour, be taking your calls. 0344 499 1000. That cat killer guy, do we need to do something about the way we approach cruelty to animals? We say we're a nation of animal lovers. Our punitive system is hopeless. I don't like calling for people, lock them away, put them in jail. I'm not that type of person, but we are not severe enough on people who are unconscionably cruel to animals. He beat those poor little cats to death with a blunt instrument, systematically. Not just in one session, just day after day after day, shouting and screaming at them until they died. Nearly killed a third cat. He got a 500 quid fine. The authorities took it so seriously, they exhumed the cats. The RSPCA prosecuting exhumed the cats. And then the judge gives him a 500 quid fine. Well, I say someone like that, who does something like that, has to go to jail. We've got to start sending a message that you can't do that. 0344 499 1000. Also, should we pay the French more money now that they are approaching, agreeing, entering the sea to try to intercept the small boats as they make their way to Britain? After all these years, we gave them 800 million quid. They never once even put their toes in the sea. They just went, bye, enjoy Dover. Give our regards to Rishi, give our regards to Keir. You know, they never did anything. Now we're saying, look, come on, get in the water. 800 million quid. They go, well, yeah, well, all right, but well, you have to give us some more money. Hey? 0344 499 1000. And what do you think about Rachel Reeves? She's got to go, hasn't she? Say sorry, Rachel. Say sorry. This sick spectacle of Keir and Reeves last couple of days saying, oh no, this is all going to plan. The economy is back in shape and therefore we're able to reinstate the winter fuel allowance. Oh, come on. We're not stupid. Stop lying to us. You've been shamed into doing this. Partly because pensioners were dying of the cold left, right and centre. Partly because your own left wing are saying you've got to do, this isn't Labour, this isn't social. You've been shamed into doing it. You never should have done it. You're absolutely incompetent. For God's sake, say sorry. 0344 499 1000. And do you want ID cards? Because they're coming your way pretty damn soon. Keir Starmer's the same as the rest of them, socialists. They want to control you. Good way to control the population? Issue them with ID cards. Then when you're walking down the street, you do something slightly wrong or you look suspicious, coppers stop you, officials stop you. Papers, please. Is that the kind of Britain you want to live in? That's the kind of Britain Keir Starmer wants. That's the kind of Britain Tony Blair wants. 0344 499 1000. Now, who's the most dangerous? We're looking at the cabinet, these motley crew that Keir Starmer calls the cabinet of this country. Who's the most dangerous out of all of them? Well, obviously Ed Miliband, mad Ed, crazy Ed Miliband, very, very dangerous. Rachel Reeves, obviously she's destroying the economy. She's very dangerous. Bridget Phillipson, little social class warrior, education secretary. She's dangerous, doesn't like freedom of speech. But here's someone quietly who I think is extraordinarily dangerous. Maybe warranted number one in the charts of dangerous members of this cabinet. It's this guy, Richard Hermer. He's Lord Hermer now, of course. He is the Attorney General, the kind of North London fashionable left-wing lawyer mate of Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer's first act as Prime Minister was to ennoble Richard Hermer, human rights lawyer, to make him, in order to be able to make him Attorney General. Since then, he's given away the Chagos Islands. If you look at his history, the guy hates Britain. All he's ever done is represent sort of Jerry Adams. Anybody who was against Britain, he's represented. He's fought against this country legally for all of his snivelling career. He's a left-wing, dangerous lawyer, in my view, anti-British. Now, let's focus in on what I think is the most alarming element of this man's life, this man's career. It is, or indeed was, his support for a lying scumbag lawyer called Phil Shiner. Now, I hope some of you, or most of you, will remember the disgusting actions of Philip Shiner, who ran a law firm which specialised in representing the alleged victims of torture by British soldiers during the Iraq War. His law firm was behind 65% of the 3,392 allegations against UK soldiers lodged by something called the Iraq Historic Allegations Team. Shiner grandstanded as a defender of human rights, a defender of victims of war. He claimed that our troops captured, tortured and murdered innocent Iraqi civilians after the Battle of Danny Boy near Amara in 2004. This serious allegation turned out to be wholly, completely, totally untrue. And Shiner, it turned out, was busy paying an Iraqi middleman to find claimants prepared to pretend that they had been mistreated by British soldiers. The soldiers, the veterans that were accused in Shiner's reign of terror, some of them attempted suicide, lives were ruined. This guy was just making money out of lies, lying about British soldiers, pretending they tortured Iraqis when they didn't. He felt that made him look like a knight in shining armour, a human rights lawyer. Now, he was struck off. He admitted acting without integrity. That's the understatement of the year. And last December at Southwark Crown Court, this human rights crook was given a 2-year suspended sentence for 3 counts of fraud. So he's a convicted fraudster, no longer a lawyer. Good riddance. 3 months after a public inquiry, judge-led, dismissed Shiner's war crime claims as deliberate lies. Here we go, this is the point. Richard Hermer, the then Richard Hermer, he wasn't Lord, he was then human rights lawyer, Richard Hermer praised Philip Shiner for launching, this is in a speech, I quote, this is after he was disgraced, he praised Shiner for launching, and I quote, extraordinarily important cases that have exposed systematic use of torture, for example, by the British Army in Iraq. That's just not true. That's what he said. After Shiner was disgraced, was exposed as a liar who preyed on the lives of brave British veterans, making up lies about them torturing Iraqis. 3 months after his fall from grace, Richard Hermer, human rights lawyer, now our Attorney General, praised him for his extraordinarily important cases that have exposed systematic use of torture, for example, by the British Army in Iraq. That, ladies and gentlemen, is our current Attorney General. What a disgrace, what a scandal. Let's talk to the chair of the Great British PAC, Ben Habib. Ben, this man Hermer, I mean, why is he our Attorney General?
Good evening, Kevin. Well, I think he epitomises everything that's wrong with the Starmer government and this essential anti-British foundation on which it's built. you were musing about who the worst member of cabinet is. And actually, it's not Hermer. Of course, the worst member of cabinet is Starmer, because he heads the whole thing up.
The daddy of them all, yeah.
The daddy of them all.
Yeah.
But Hermer is a particularly vile individual. He was promoting claims from the Caribbean islands against the United Kingdom for reparations. He represented Gerry Adams, as you rightly say. He promoted the change to the Legacy Act, which was an act the Conservatives brought in ostensibly to draw a line under the Northern Irish Troubles. He promoted a change in that act, which would have allowed Gerry Adams to make a claim for compensation against the British state because he had been detained. This is a man who has represented umpteen, unpronounceable names that I wish I could quote at you, but as I say, they're unpronounceable. Islamist terrorists. He's represented them. He's represented the cases of illegal migrants who found their way, as it happens paradoxically, to Chagos. He represented their cases to bring them to the United Kingdom. He was also an architect of the Chagos deal. This man his blood runs with anti-Britishness. And I think he is the best reflection of how awful Starmer is. And we've seen Starmer repeatedly make decisions that are effectively against the British national interest. And Hermer is of exactly the same mould.
You remember, I'm sure, Ben, the Philip Shiner case. Now, this was a guy, Philip Shiner. The nation was absolutely outraged by this guy because for a number of years, you know, he was never out of the papers, never off the TV, condemning the awful acts of British soldiers in Iraq, torturing innocent Iraqis, etc., etc. He was always out there, of course, polishing his own halo along the way. You know, it brings me no pleasure to condemn the acts of British soldiers in Iraq, but crimes are crimes. War crimes against humanity must be pursued, and it falls upon me so to do, and all this kind of pompous claptrap. Turned out he was lying. He was lying. He hired intermediaries to go searching for Iraqis who were prepared to take a few quid to make up stories. So he was quite rightly shamed. He was struck off by the Solicitors Commission. His company had to close down, thank God. He now says he's broken everything. Now, he was quite rightly disgraced and shamed. 3 months after that, a public inquiry actually dismissed him as a deliberate liar. 3 months after that, Hermer praised him for his extraordinary work, exposing torture by British soldiers in Iraq. I mean, this is the Attorney General. But
Hermer would praise him because if you accept for a moment that, as I said, he's anti-British, it suits him to trash our military. It suits him to trash any foreign intervention that we make and to try and rubbish our intervention to the maximum possible extent. Of course, Iraq was a really bad intervention. There was no justification for the Iraq war. What we did was stir up huge trouble, and that was actually the blame for that obviously lies with Tony Blair and his administration. But people like Shiner and Hermer get on that bandwagon, and they'll rubbish our good, honest, loyal, patriotic, serving troops. And we've seen this, and this goes again to the heart of what I've been saying, Kevin, that effectively they're anti-British. And what better way to undermine the British state than to undermine its ability to defend itself, to attack the very people who are serving for the protection of the United Kingdom. And so when Starmer talks about, wanting to build up our military and everything else, and at the same time is negotiating with the EU, as I think, at least I hope many of the listeners and viewers are aware, taking the British military into the European Defence Union, effectively subjugating our military to the EU. All of this is part of the same, if I can use the word, plot to damage this country, to remove the nationhood of the United Kingdom. And so didn't matter to Hermer that Shiner was lying. All that mattered to Hermer was that China was promoting his ideology, which is essentially anti-British.
Yeah, let's remember, this was Starmer's first act. I think it was almost simultaneous with his other first act, if I can put it that way, which was, of course, the impetuous, childlike, juvenile scrapping of the Rwanda scheme, thereby flushing £700 million worth of British investment straight down the drain. So while he was doing that, he was also busy ennobling Richard Hermer, who of course is an old mate of his on the North London Guardian reading human rights lawyer circuit, dinner party circuit. It's really, really worrying, because quite clearly Hermer, sort of politically and in terms of his outlook, is a kindred spirit to our Prime Minister. So what you see Hermer espousing is really the thoughts of Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer agrees with this guy. Even his own cabinet, even Labour politicians, many of the cabinet, are beginning to say to Keir, this guy is really bad. He's bad news. But Keir Starmer's sticking by his old mate because he believes this. Keir Starmer doubtless believes that most British soldiers are torturers. This is what these people think. Army, military, bad. War, bad.
Well, we know that he absolutely adores Hermer because he took the extraordinary step of ennobling him so that he could be in the cabinet. And Hermer is also responsible for example, the incarceration of Tommy Robinson, elevating Tommy Robinson's case from a civil case effectively into a criminal case, and directing the courts, as we've so often seen, to take draconian action against those whom they don't, who stand against their own ideology.
Also, Ben, he's the guy who personally sanctioned the prosecution of Lucy Connolly. He personally sanctioned that. Lucy Connolly, of course, doing 2 years and 7 months for writing some hurty words on social media after the Southport riots. That was what Richard Hermer thought was the good dispensing of British justice.
And the direction of the judiciary is increasingly itself anti-British. We've now discovered that Prevent are going to regard those of us who are against mass immigration as basically terrorists. I'm sure you saw that.
We did this story last night. It beggars belief that.
It beggars belief. You talk about immigration, which we all know, any sane-minded, sensible individual knows, is putting huge burdens on this country, both economically, culturally, from a law and order perspective, and in all respects. And if you were to talk about it now, you could be arrested for terrorism.
But you see, this is it, Ben.
For goodness sake.
I know, this is it, Ben. That Prevent classification or ruling that any of us who are slightly concerned about the migrant crisis are actually signing up to a terrorist ideology, to use their terminology, and that we may, in fact, require de-radicalisation. Now, what is the thinking that informs that kind of nonsense? It's the kind of thinking that Richard Hermer espouses. It is this mad left-wing nonsense, this assumption that anyone who might be a bit centrist or, horror of horrors, slightly right of centre is a far-right potential terrorist. That's what Starmer thinks, that's what Hermer thinks, that's what the idiots who run Prevent thinks, and it's really, really worrying, because that is juvenile, sixth-form political claptrap.
Well, if you stand against the existence of the United Kingdom, I'm sure these people do, because they repeatedly reveal that in the policies that they espouse and sign up to. If you stand against the existence of the United Kingdom, what you ultimately wish to do is to take down its borders. And the result of taking down borders is mass migration. These things are all linked. They have a contempt for British culture. They have a contempt for British history. They hate the fact the British Empire was such a phenomenal force across the globe. They hate the fact that Winston Churchill stood against the Nazis and won. They can't stand any of it. They loathe any pride in the country. They loathe the nation state of the United Kingdom. And all of these policies, these approaches, these promotions of terrorists, changing acts of parliament so that people like Jerry Adams can bring a case against the British government, all of this, putting Lucy Colony in jail, shutting down free speech, all of it is part of this anti-British agenda.
Absolutely. And, you know, call me old-fashioned, but so 100 years ago or so, you know, the British Empire was still massive. Now, when people say to me, the British Empire, because this is true, the British Empire is the largest and the greatest empire the world has ever seen, I can't help feeling just a little bit proud.
I love it.
Herma, Starmer, most of our cabinet, they're ashamed of that. And therein, Ben, lies our serious problem. Ben, great to talk to you as always. That's Ben Habib, chair of the Great British PAC. What do you think about this guy, Herma? Give me a call, 03444991000. I don't know if many of you remember Phil Shiner. Turns out Richard Herma loves old Shiner. 03444991000. When we come back, I'm going to ask the question, you know, good for Prince William if he really believes in all this climate change stuff. If he's a big Green campaigner, believes it. But I keep being told that the royal family is supposed to be politically neutral. Why are William and Charles allowed to, in public, make speeches, bang the drum constantly about hardline climate change beliefs? Why are they allowed to be political about green stuff? Why? 03444991000. We'll discuss that next.
The back doors of the aircraft were open.
Yeah.
If the gentleman was requested to use a toilet, which because of how our human rights are and what we've got to abide by, then they would have allowed him to go.
Yeah.
But fundamental errors, because he was wearing a waist restraint belt, he should have had the handles held and to and from the toilet. It doesn't look like it was put on completely correctly, as his wrists look to be free.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
we're moving on to a story about Prince William in a second. I've just received a story from the Telegraph saying that in the House of Lords, one of the special dishes today was Pride Crumble. It's a dessert topped with dyed red, white and blue colouring to mark Pride Month. Pride Crumble. Why? What for? So in the Lord's canteen of the restaurant, they got this crumble, apple crumble. It's covered in the colours of the rainbow to mark Pride Month. I mean, what's the point of that? It's just, God, so ridiculous. Right, let's move on. Prince William, I want to ask the question. You know, Prince William, he made a speech down in Monaco yesterday, his latest tub-thumping oratory about climate change. Save the planet, save the planet, save the sea, save the ocean. Yes, yes, yes. Charles is just as bad. Gotta save the world, gotta save the climate change emergency. Yeah, mankind is just... Well, you know, they're entitled to their views, these two. The royal family are entitled to their opinions. But I thought the convention was that the royal family, for obvious reasons, doesn't get involved in politics. You know, so you don't have Prince William standing up and saying, I really think the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, have made a massive mistake on this winter fuel allowance. She should think again. You know, I can see you can't really have that. These are very influential people. Therefore, we have this sensible system where by common consent they don't talk about politics in public, except if it's climate change. Why is that? Why are they allowed to talk about climate change but no other politics? Here is William from yesterday.
Watching human activity reduce beautiful sea forests to barren deserts at the base of our oceans is simply heartbreaking. For many, it is an urgent wake-up call to just what is going on in our oceans. But it can no longer be a matter of out of sight, out of mind. The need to act to protect our ocean is now in full view. As ever.
And so on and so forth, usual old claptrap. That was actually a couple of days ago in Monaco at the Blue Economy and Finance Forum in Monaco on Sunday. Let's talk to the climate specialist, author, Chris Morrison at the Daily Sceptic. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
Very well. It is a strange anomaly, isn't it? That it's quite right that our royal family, by convention, don't talk about their political opinions. They're very influential people, and therefore people should be allowed to make up their own minds without the king saying, this is what I think you should think. So that's a good system. Why do you think it is that system breaks down when it comes to climate change? That the king, Prince William, in fact all of them, but the king and William are obsessive tub thumpers on this, that they are allowed to preach to us about their political views about climate change. Why do you think there is that exception?
Well, I would suggest that there's nothing wrong with them talking about science, climate change. The problem is they know nothing about it. And I'm afraid Prince William has been keeping some very bad company recently with that old BBC eco-grifter, Sir David Attenborough, is filling his head with all sorts of nonsense. I recall a programme on the BBC only 2 years ago when he told a BBC audience, sent all the children to bed crying, when he said that the Arctic sea ice would all be gone by 2035. So there'll be swimming galas at the North Pole, if you like. Yeah. He got this from some computer model rubbish that he'd been sort of fed. In fact, if you look at the data, you'll see that from 2007, the Arctic sea ice extent has been on pause. It has not declined over every single month since 2007. And since about 2017, about 10 years ago, it's had a slight increase. Arctic sea ice is cyclical. We've had a high, we had a bit of a low, and now it's in a sort of pause phase. So the problem is that they associate with these people who fill their head with all sorts of nonsense. Prince Charles or King Charles is just as bad, the people he's been talking to. They fill their head with the idea that the science over climate is settled. And so the reason that the climate is settled and the reason they only hear one side of the story is when politics comes into it. Because the scientific process has been produced over the last 30 years in the interest of claiming that it's settled science. Whenever I hear the word settled science, I reach and count the spoons. It's ridiculous. So they've got this idea of settled science, and the reason, of course, is this is where we come into politics. A settled science idea that the world is going to hell in a handcart is portrayed, and of course, sending the children to bed crying, sending mass climate psychosis throughout the world in order to promote a very, very political net zero collectivist economy agenda.
Yeah, exactly right, and that's why I wanted to discuss this with you, because what we're talking about here is politics. It's politics. So we as a society have exempted climate change from the rest of political discourse. The rest of political discourse is, you think that, I think that, up for debate, da-da-da. Get to net zero. I don't think this, and I know you don't think this, but the orthodoxy is, no, there's no need for debate about the climate change emergency and the race to net zero. There's no need for debate about that, because that is a scientific fact. That is written in stone. It isn't. But King Charles and Prince William act as if it is. So they are preaching debatable nonsense to people as if it's fact. And I think that this country, Britain, the Prime Minister, unlikely to do it, but you never know, needs to have a word with these two and say, look, this is politics. You've got to stop doing this. Because basically, what are William and Charles doing at the moment? They are doing that madman, Crazy Ed Miliband, the biggest favour of his life by basically backing him up. Charles undoubtedly believes almost every word that lunatic says. William's not far behind. I think this is a problem, I really do.
Well, Charles, the right Charlie, as I call him, since 2009, said there were 96 months to save the world from imminent climate and ecological collapse. I think it's been at least twice that amount of months since. At the same time, he also said, and this is where politics comes into it, he said that the age of consumerism, the age of convenience is over. Over. You think what that means, to people who for 200 years have used hydrocarbons to pull themselves out of being, quite frankly, serfs on the feudal lands of people like, wait for it, King Charles. So he doesn't really have. He has a very aristocratic way of looking at these things. Doesn't seem to be that keen on consumerism. It doesn't, of course, apply to himself. Mm-hmm. When he became king, he added substantially to his palatial portfolio. He's now got goodness knows how many houses all around the world. He in fact was reported to find himself in club class once. He was on a trip to Hong Kong and he couldn't work out why the seats were so uncomfortable. he thought he was in first class, but the seats were very uncomfortable. He complained for the royal posterior. He was in business class. This man has a fleet of private planes usually to take him around, chauffeur-driven limousines. He's even got his own train, of course. Yeah. So of course this sort of consumerism is not like to sort of stop him. Like a lot of his class, they're kind of appalled by how wealthy people have got, how they have stuff, and all this wasteful consumerism and all this sort of stuff, so they almost meet in the middle with people like Miliband, who's essentially a sort of neo-Marxist, who doesn't believe in capitalism. So Charles doesn't believe in consumerism. Miliband doesn't believe in capitalism. So they go on really well.
Yeah. So somehow or other, it's a forlorn project, I would suggest, but somehow or other, I'd like to get it over to them. I don't think they realise. I don't think Charlie or William realise that when they make these speeches about the planet dying in 3 days' time and how we've got to stop consuming anything at all, etc., etc., I don't think they realise that this is flat out serious politics. So I wish someone could convey this to them, that you are breaking the sacred rule of royalty. You are preaching politics to the people, and they should be stopped. But I think that they don't realise it. Like everyone else involved, the people who've swallowed the kind of net zero Kool-Aid, they just think it's a fact. It's a bit like the BBC, isn't it? It was some 10 years ago or something. Wasn't there a memo sent round to all the journalists? We no longer debate the climate change emergency. It is a fact. That is the bedrock of our coverage of climate issues. It is a fact that the planet is dying. It is a fact that mankind is destroying it. So it is this kind of weird orthodoxy that the BBC bought into, and now the Royals. That I think this is worrying. I think it's worrying.
Very worrying. I mean, I remember that BBC memo. Franz Unsworth, who was the head of news, said that we don't debate climate change now because it's like we don't debate the final score when the referee whistles blows. It's 3-2. Get over it. You know, it's this is their mindset over science, which is a process of continual investigation and process. They completely banned it at the BBC. It's really quite odd, but it leads into all sorts of peculiar things because Prince William, again going back to him. He's got this Earthshot Prize, which gives £1 million to 5 times a year to entrepreneurs who have some idea to sort of save the planet or whatever. So anyway, 5 years ago, they gave it to a company called Coral Vita in the Bahamas. Now, Coral Vita's great idea was because all the corals are disappearing. They're not, by the way, but we'll come to that. All the corals are disappearing. Then they would incubate them and they would plant them in the sea. So I looked today up at this site. I sort of knew about this. Since they got the prize 4 years ago, they planted 15,000 corals in the sea. Nice sort of job, I would think. Just a sort of job maybe for a sort of gap year, for a sort of a nice, person who's doing a degree and look good on the CV. Anyway, so it's 15,000, which works out at 3,700 plants they're planting a year. So I looked up with them. I asked my friend Mr. Grock to give me an estimate of the number of corals there are in the sea, and a very polite AI program, but it came up with the correct idea that in the Pacific Ocean alone, there's not a lot of work done on this, but there are 500 billion corals. That's 500 billion. So I worked out the percentage of the corals, they're 3,750 annual, compared with the number of corals in the Pacific. And I say that's only a part number. And the answer was, and if you're sitting comfortably, Kevin, I'll start. This is a percentage, 0.00000, still with me?
Yes.
0.0075%.
Thanks, William. You just saved the planet. Thank you so much.
So he has produced 6 zeros, that is, 75%. That's his contribution, and £1 million has gone down the Swanee.
£1 million down the Swanee. I just wanted to sort of go up to William and Charles and say, look, there are some of us out here. In fact, there's quite a few, you'd be surprised at, who are sceptical about all of this stuff that you have swallowed hook, line and sinker. So I just think we have to do something about it. And by the way, of course, why is Greta Thunberg making a fool of herself in Israel at the moment? It's because some years ago, she confidently predicted that humanity would be dead. All of us destroyed by 2023. So she's reeling from the disappointment that prediction didn't come true, so she's moved on to free Palestine, save Gaza. There you have it. Interesting times, and good to talk to you, Chris, always. Chris Morrison there, author and writer at the Daily Sceptic. What do you think about it? Because when you say, I'm always saying, there's all these bloody royals telling us about the Greens claptrap. Why don't they shut? They go, oh, he's only caring about the planet. Why are you being so rotten? Leave him alone. He's a good guy. He cares about the planet. Okay, fine, but that's politics. Either the royals don't talk about politics or they do. And if they're going to talk about climate change, like they do, they might as well say, I'm pretty worried about Keir Starmer's approach to the economy, they might as well start talking about everything else as well. See what I mean? You can't pick and choose. So I say they should be banned from talking about climate change. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to break now. When we come back, your phone calls.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. In a little while, I'm going to be talking about the city beneath the sand. We covered the story quite recently of the fact that, or suggestions that the pyramids in Egypt are sort of held up by these enormous columns that go plunge down subterranean to enormous depths, and that somehow there are chambers down there. Well, now they say they've found similar columns and chambers underneath the smaller pyramids, and that indeed underneath the pyramids was a sort of complex of subterranean cities. There's a pyramid beneath that, or a city beneath the sand. So an increasing picture is emerging of this complex kind of civilization that may have lived beneath the ground. We'll talk about that after the next break. And by the way, at 9 o'clock, after 9 o'clock, I'll be joined by the former Reform UK chairman, Zia Youssef. Now that they've appointed a new guy, David Bull, our friend here, presenter on Talk. He's going to have to be giving up the breakfast show at the weekend, which is a great shame, of course. But he's got a very exciting job to do, and Zia knows all about it. So I'll talk to Zia about, the Herculean task ahead for David Bull, the tips he has, how he found it, etc., etc., and basically the path ahead for reform. These are exciting times. Right, before any of that, though, let's take a call. Let's go to Rod in Dinkley. I want to talk about net zero. Rod, what would you like to say? Hello.
Well, Kevin.
Hi, Rod. Yeah, you want to talk about net zero, yeah?
I'm on about net zero, yes. I'm fascinated with how the establishment promotes this idea of carbon dioxide from the environment of the planet. As a young man at school, I was privileged to be educated with the oxygen cycle and the carbon cycle, whereby we take in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide, and the planets on the planet breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen, which seems to me to work very well.
Yeah, go on.
If we were successful in net zero and removing carbon dioxide emissions from the whole of the world, we'd
all die. Yeah, we do actually need carbon dioxide. We need carbon emissions. You're absolutely right. But I think the argument is that we have to. For the argument, I'm not saying I necessarily go along with it, but the argument is that we are creating far too many carbon emissions, and this could be lethal. It's certainly, say, damaging to the planet.
May I make just one small point before finishing?
Yeah.
So I've gone to the length of researching this situation, and I can tell you, if you were care to Google it, shall we say, 60 million years ago, there was 6 times the level of carbon dioxide on this planet than there is today.
Yeah, that's what I always say.
Here we are, with a wonderful green planet. Yeah. So where is this zero carbon emissions going to take us to?
You're absolutely right. During the dinosaurs era, there was a hell of a lot of carbon being produced. Why was that, do you think, Rod? Do you think it was because dinosaurs, because Tyrannosaurus Rex drove around in cars and the Brontosaurus watched the TV and so on and so forth? It's nonsense. It's nonsense, isn't it? And that's why I worry about our royal family preaching all of this stuff as fact. At the very least, it's debatable. So I don't think it's right that we have the King and the Prince of Wales acting as if this is immutable. It's absolute fact, not to be discussed. No, this is a fact. It isn't a fact, and we need to discuss it, and we don't need the royal family pretending that it's all 100% true. Rod, point taken. Really good call. Thank you for ringing. Rod in Dinkley there. Let's go to break. When we come back, city beneath the pyramids, beneath the sand. That next.
the back doors of the aircraft were open.
Yeah.
If the gentleman was requested to use a toilet, which because of how our human rights are and what we've got to abide by, then they would have allowed him to go.
Yeah.
But fundamental errors, because he was wearing a waist restraint belt, he should have had the handles held and to and from the toilet. It doesn't look like it was put on completely correctly, as his wrists look to be free.
Rachel Reeves woke up one morning and decided to pick a fight with the nation's pensioners, exposing them to a cold, bleak winter. And now we've seen the inevitable U-turn. She should apologise. And most importantly, she needs to say how she is going to fund. We were told by Lucy Powell that if they hadn't made this...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's talk about Egypt. Let's talk about the famous pyramids. Now, I think it was a month ago or so, it might have been 2 months, something like that, fairly recently. I discussed on this show the alleged discovery of huge caverns, or sort of massive pillars beneath the famous big pyramids. And amid these pillars, as if they were these pillars, the pyramids were merely the pinnacle of huge sort of plunging columns, if you like, of these great columns with a twisting sort of artwork around them, apparently. And then these massive caverns or chambers, which were sort of put forward as a potentially subterranean city. Well, now the same team that claimed to have uncovered these vast underground structures below the famous Khafre pyramid, which is the big one, they now have reportedly detected similar shafts and chambers beneath the pyramid of Menkaure, which is the smallest of the 3 pyramids there. So they're now talking about potentially 2 cities beneath the sand. Let's go back to the man I spoke to about this before. He was sceptical. I mean, I've got to admit, I'm sceptical. You never know. Historian Ashley Hearn. Welcome back, Ashley.
Hi, Kevin. Good to speak to you.
Always a pleasure. Careful now. Again, I don't want you knocking this down. I want... No, seriously. So they're now saying the same team that found that say they found these evidence of these huge pillars and chambers beneath the big pyramids, now say not so far away they've found evidence of similar columns and chambers beneath the smaller pyramids. So they're sort of saying maybe a sort of second city underneath the sand. I mean, I know that you know, quite rightly, I think we should all be sceptical about this, but this team, funnily enough, from the University of Strathclyde in Scotland, being led by somebody called Filippo Biondi, who's a radar expert, because they're using electronic reading equipment to sort of see beneath the sand. I mean, they're not giving up. They say they found another one. So what's your feeling about this?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, as we talked about it back in March, that they haven't really given us any of their working. So they've made obviously a press conference and they've displayed their talked about their findings, but most Egyptologists are going to be waiting for the paper and the publication to be able to sort of, as they present their interpretations and their methods and all the information that goes with it. I mean, again, the trouble is a lot of the words that go around this story obviously a bit misleading. You think of a city, you think of a large area of sort of large numbers of people living underneath the pyramids, which
tube trains, buses, motorways, that kind of thing. Flyovers.
I mean, you're right. This shouldn't be dismissed out of hand, but similarly, you have to wait for all the evidence is presented before you can sort of make a judgment on it. And they still haven't published it yet. They've made, again, another press conference. I mean, fair enough, they've looked at the smaller of the 3 great Giza pyramids. And I suppose there's a logic if you found these whatever they are, underneath the second pyramid, then you wouldn't be surprised to find it under the smaller pyramid as well.
Sure.
I mean, we've talked about a lot of these things before. If maybe possibly, then this will be a really exciting discovery. But until you actually see the records and they prove, it's very exciting to speculate on what might be found. It does leave you wanting more sort of conclusive evidence and for them to sort of
Sure. It's sort of work in progress, isn't it? Now,
yeah, and the trouble is, without excavation, then obviously it's very difficult to know what's underneath. I mean, professional Egyptologists are very scathing about it. Now, you could argue, well, it's in their interest to be sceptical, and you could criticise them as acting as gatekeepers of knowledge, and that everyone has a sort of right to have their own theory and opinion. But when you're making these sort of claims, you do need solid evidence to be able to back it up.
To play devil's advocate, kind of traditional Egyptologists, experts, probably wouldn't like these sort of interlopers to suddenly turn up and say, look, we've discovered something that you've never mentioned, that you should have found. So there may be a bit of sort of academic warfare here. But Filippo Biondi, he says here, we firmly believe that the Giza structures are interconnected, reinforcing our view that the pyramids are merely the tip of the iceberg of a colossal underground infrastructural complex. The network likely consists of a dense system of tunnels linking the main subterranean structures. Now, if we, shall we say, reduce the concept of a city beneath the sand, it doesn't seem to me to be that far-fetched that perhaps there might have been tunnels connecting the pyramids, that there may be something in what this team is saying.
Possibly. I mean, you've got we've talked about the pyramids in Teotihuacan in Mexico, constructed a couple of thousand years later, and there were some cave structures which are underneath the later pyramids. These caves very important in Mesoamerican culture. They were places of sort of very high sort of ritual and sacred value. So it made sense to build the pyramid on top of it. I mean, there are some interesting subterranean cities around the place. There's one in Turkey, which was held up to about 20,000 people. You can go and visit it. Was used throughout the sort of first millennium, dates right back to about 500 BC.
So ancient subterranean cities are not unheard of.
They're not unheard of. It's the timing and the chronology. I mean, again, this taps into this broader argument where we're getting into the sort of work of people that are popularised by people like Graham Hancock, which argues that this ties in, our entire narrative of how human civilizations have sort of evolved over time is wrong, and there are these much older civilizations, and that's the sort of, which gets attached to this story, is the idea of you do have these subterranean sort of passageways. They are connected to a large sort of underground structure. Who built them? Who had the ability to build them? This implies a much more complex, sophisticated sort of human society than our traditional narrative has led us to believe. And while that has some truth to it, in the sense that we now understand that humans were much more complex than we give them credit for, it, we have this old narrative of sort of humans, 10,000 years ago, humans were very stupid and basic, and we've got better over time. When in fact, for the last 100,000 years, humans are probably much cleverer, much more like us than we would expect.
Yeah.
But going from that possibility to this is a positive evidence of that, at this stage it's very difficult to say.
I agree with that, obviously, but I mean, the pyramids are such incredible structures, as you say, revealing knowledge that we still can't quite understand. So the people that were capable of these incredible structures, using building techniques that we still don't quite understand, may have been capable of building subterranean cities, as well.
I mean, exactly. We shouldn't patronise the past and believe people in the past were somehow incapable of things. And again, I mean, this is such an interesting story. I mean, it's been for almost 2 centuries. We've been fascinated with ancient Egypt ever since the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, the great statue of Ramses, which is in the British Museum, which inspired the poem Ozymandias, Tutankhamun, Howard Carter. It's remarkable, isn't it, how Egypt appeals to us like no other story, no ancient civilization.
Because actually it is still There they are before our very eyes, these extraordinary structures, and they are shrouded in the most incredible mystery. Why is the Sphinx's head so small, for example, and so on?
It's these mysteries that do grab us in.
They
but we
do.
do have to be careful not to let what we would want to be true actually necessarily overcome the evidence that what we can prove. So we'll just wait and see how the story develops.
It's brilliant to talk to you, Ashley, always. Thank you so much. Ashley Hearn there, historian. The pyramids, what do you reckon? 03444991000. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Zia Yusuf, until recently the chairman of Reform UK. He quit that job. David Bull, our colleague here, is the new chairman. We'll talk to Zia about what lies ahead. That next, stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm taking your calls in about 20 minutes, or you can text me, or you can send me a WhatsApp voice note. Up to you. Prefer a call, of course. 03444991000. Let me ask you this. Why is Lucy Connolly doing 2 years and 7 months in jail for writing hurty words on social media during the Southport riots? Why is she in jail for 2 years and 7 months when a little monster, a thug, a 20-year-old thug, who systematically beat his girlfriend's cats to death using blunt instruments, not just in once, just over time and time again, systematically beat them, screaming at them. You could hear their shrieks of terror all the way down the street. Yeah, a third cat just about survived. The RSPCA got it in the nick of time. Has face all over the place. This guy systematically tortured and killed those little cats. 500 quid fine, walked free. What is wrong with that picture to you? Let me know. 0344 499 1000. If you're going to send, in my view, if you're going to send Lucy Connolly to jail for 2 years and 7 months, that little creep who did that to those poor little cats, he gets 10 years. Should have got 10 years anyway, if you ask me. But why didn't he go to jail? Why did a judge say, oh, I'm not going to send you to jail because that would cause distress to your family? what he did to those cats. 03444991000. Now, let's move on to Reform UK. They've been in the news a lot over the last week or so. Our colleague, my friend, David Bull, he presents at the moment the Weekend Breakfast Show here at Talk, was today amazingly announced as the new chairman of Reform UK. He has a tough, difficult, but terribly thrilling job ahead, and one of the most exciting jobs, I would say, in British politics when you take Reform's momentum into account. Now, would it be this time last week? The guy I'm going to talk to now was still in the job. He was the Reform UK chairman. Now, he stepped down. Actually left the party for a little while, and then he came back. He's now in charge of Reform UK's much-needed Doge campaign, Department of Government Efficiency. He's going to go around to the various new reform councils and try and knock them into order, knock them into shape when it comes to wastage, to expenditure, wasting expenditure, and every council and this government could do with a dose of that. So a warm welcome to the show to Zia Youssef. Welcome, Zia.
Good evening.
First of all, let me ask you this. David Bull, my friend, my colleague here at Talk, has taken over the job that you had just a week ago. What advice would you give David, Zia?
Try to have the odd day off, probably. But David is a dynamo, as you know. Dr. David Bull is hugely well liked across the party. And I remember saying last year to Nigel, head of the conference, I said, we have to have David involved. And obviously, as you know, he stepped down as deputy leader just a few months before that. And he's obviously a brilliant man. He's been loyal to Nigel for many years. And look, what's also true is that the party, I come from a tech startup background, and the party's gone from a startup now to now where it is as kind of a scale up. So it makes sense. There are huge roles now that need filling. And I no doubt Dr. David Bull is going to be a phenomenal chairman for the party, and I wish him the very best, not that he'll need it.
Nigel Farage, I think, said that he thought that being chairman of Reform UK probably involved about a 100-hour working week. Would that gel with your conception of it?
Well, look, I've always been something of a workaholic, and look, you know David, right? He's hardly work shy, so he's an incredibly hard worker. But pretty much everybody is at Reform, and when I took over as chairman in July last year, there was virtually no infrastructure. There actually wasn't really much of a political party at all. We've assembled this thing in flight, as it were. We've gone from 14% support to over 30% in the polls, quadrupled the size of the membership, 400 branches. So, look, no doubt it's going to be an incredibly taxing job because Nigel is now the bookmaker's favourite to be the next Prime Minister. I know from all the heartfelt and very moving messages I got, I was inundated with them after I resigned, and it just made me realise just how important the Reform movement is to people. It's so much more than a political party. It really represents, to paraphrase a lot of the messages that I got, what many see as the last hope this country has to turn itself around.
I want to move on to your Doge work in just a second, but I've got to ask you a final question about the events of the past week or so. What was it that made you sort of resign in sort of fairly dramatic circumstances, and then you posted that tweet which got people like me really wound up? What's going on here? What happened to make you post that tweet and sort of quit like that? What was it? Sheer exhaustion, or?
Yeah, it really was that. I don't mind saying for 11 months, I had basically not had a day off. And, even after the elections, and we're very proud, May the 1st, I think, will go down as the most historic set of local elections in this country. But even after that, you remember I was at the count at Runcorn when we won by 6 votes. It finished, pretty much 8, 9 in the morning, headed straight to a celebratory event in Kent, and then straight off to go and launch 10 councils. It really was just exhaustion, and that caused an error, which I don't mind saying. It was an error, and I regret that tweet. But what I will say is I I sincerely hope and believe that we'll look back on that as something of a forcing function now, because everyone's to give everybody, David's going to be the new chairman. I'm running Doge. There's a broadening now of the management team. Look, I was basically doing about 11 people's jobs, frankly, by that stage. So something had to happen. I mean, I cracked a joke at the start of the press conference today that I said, look, sorry to put you all through that, but I felt like the only way I was going to get a couple of days off was to resign and come back.
Resign and come back. So was it after you did quit like that, I'm assuming Nigel's on the phone and he persuaded you back in. How did he do that?
Well, no. So I had reflected on the fact that, as I said, I was inundated with messages, and incredibly moving. I remember one chap who said he was in palliative care and he found this news devastating. Reforms are really a critical movement for a lot of people. They place so much hope into it, and we're so grateful for that. And they felt that I was an important part of that. And then, as I said at the press conference today, sometimes, and hopefully people listening can empathise with this, sometimes it takes a little bit of distance from someone or something in order to truly appreciate its importance and significance. And this was the case here. And I realized this was the most important mission of my life. I couldn't let people down. Perhaps not dissimilarly, actually, to when Nigel, if you remember, feels like ages ago, doesn't it, when he originally said he wasn't coming back and he was going to go to America, changed his mind. And what an incredibly important, I think, a historically important decision that was. So, no, I messaged Nigel and he called me and we spoke multiple times. I said, look, I regret the tweet. And look, this is such an important mission. It is so important. I'm sure many of your listeners, feel that way. And I want to do everything I can to get Nigel into number 10 and get a reformed government. And I'm very confident we're going to do that.
This is my last question about chairmanship, being the chairman of the Reform UK Party, and then we'll move on to Doge. What, in your view, is the most important job, the most important part of the job of Reform UK chairman? In other words, what should David Bull make his number one priority?
Well, I think, as Nigel said this morning, the role, because I was kind of doing, frankly, way more than the chairman's job. I was doing everything from final approving bank payments and filling out HMRC forms. The reality, David's going to have now a clearer mandate, still a huge amount of work to do, but it's really getting out, seeing the branches, firing up the volunteers who, come rain or shine. We deliver hundreds of thousands of leaflets during that election campaign, completely voluntarily, and that was so important that they did that. So I think that's the thing that he needs to do, and I think he's the perfect man for that job. He's such an inspiring, brilliant, eloquent speaker who just exudes positive energy. I'm sure you agree.
Yes, he is. Good guy to have a beer with as well. I can testify to that. One very, very final question. I had Sarah Pochin on my show on Friday, or was it Thursday night? Thursday drive time. And she, and I agree with that. I said to Sarah, you're not telling me that Zia has quit because you asked that question about the burqa. And she said nothing could be further from the truth. Can you confirm it wasn't the raising of the burqa issue that got you heading for the hills?
No. I mean, absolutely not. And again, for the sake of just repeating it for the record, if I was an MP, which I'm not obviously, but if I was, and there was a vote on that topic, it would be a very difficult decision. But I think long and hard, I probably would vote in favour of banning face coverings in public places, in which the burqa would be included, but also Antifa face masks. I've seen firsthand an Antifa thug, well, Antifa thugs, plural, threaten Nigel, threaten our members, knock the tooth out of one of Nigel's security. Pretty terrifying stuff. So I probably would vote in favour of that. And of course it wasn't that.
OK, Zia, let's talk about Doge. Also a fascinating subject. I mean, we've seen Elon Musk go about sorting out Washington's waste. I mean, it was a theatrical spectacle to watch. Perhaps too much of that. You've got some serious work to do. I'm looking here at some statistics. Kent Council, amazing that you got Kent, by the way, has admitted to £2.8 million worth of confirmed fraud last year alone. We did a story recently that I think they paid something, they spent sort of £36,000 paying for asylum seekers' driving lessons before they'd been granted asylum. So do you have to go through the books with a fine-tooth comb to find, not only these vast, large areas of waste, but the small ones?
Well, absolutely. You look after the pennies, the pounds look after themselves, right? So, look, the reason I'm using those numbers is because that's the fraud that Kent County Council has already admitted. And I want to make a point here, that £2.8 million, a lot of money. How often do you hear people say, oh, the councils, most of their budget is statutory, it's mandatory, nothing to see here, there's no waste to be found, there's no waste to be found. Almost all of that fraud happened inside these so-called mandatory statutory budgets. For example, within that, there were huge amounts of money invoiced by taxi companies for journeys that never happened in terms of taking SEND kids to school. Huge amounts of money from adult social care firms to care for people who had sadly long since passed away. Lots of money being spent on employees who had long since left. And so I'm convinced, and I will tell you, my inbox is awash with whistleblowers sending me all kinds of information. Now, obviously, we've got to investigate it. We've got to look into it. But we have been assembling an all-star team of some of the brightest and best people in this country. I've got computer science PhDs from Oxford University, all sorts of incredible people, forensic engineers, all working pro bono, all incredibly patriotic, who see finally there's an opportunity in this reform, through this reform movement, for there to be not just accountability, but I keep saying a reckoning is coming. The national budget is £1.2 trillion. I'll give you another statistic, right? If you take these big accounting firms and these big consulting firms, the KPMGs, the PwCs, the McKinseys, over the last 5 years, they have been awarded contracts worth £8.5 billion, and that is while the civil service payroll has grown by 50% over the last 8 to 10 years. So there's no doubt that taxpayers' money is not being spent the way people would spend money themselves. I was last night going through a load of taxi contracts where multi-million-pound contracts with taxi firms to take SEND kids to school, which is obviously an important thing to do. And many of these contracts are being awarded with just one bidder in the tender. I put it to you, if you were calling a taxi firm to take you to the airport, you'd probably give a couple of firms a call, wouldn't you? Just to make sure you wouldn't just
maybe I would.
Millions of pounds of taxpayers' money, that just isn't happening. So I think there is endemic waste. I do think, frankly, that there's fraud as well. What's clear is British taxpayers have been taken for mugs for too long, and we are going to stand up for taxpayers.
Are you going to take a look at some of the employees of your councils? I mean, all around the country. I mean, obviously, lots of councils aren't run by reform, but a surprisingly big number are now. And, we read about this all the time. We have chief executives of councils, earning something like 5 times more than the Prime Minister. How can it be that the person running Sunderland or something earns £500,000 and the person running the country earns 170,000? Are you going to go through some of these very highly paid executives and work out whether or not they're worth it? Because I would suggest that a lot of council tax goes towards paying these executives who don't really deliver value for money, but getting these enormous salaries. There are too many of them, and something needs to be done. Is that, are they among your targets?
Yeah, well, look, clearly we have an issue there. And look, I came from the world of business, and I have no issue with executives earning lots of money if they're delivering incredible performance. I believe in paid performance. But the reality is what we're seeing at the moment is council after council after council failing catastrophically, declaring bankruptcy, which then means that they can ramp council tax on their poor constituents by, in some cases 30% year on year. You've got not just the chief executives on hundreds of thousands of pounds, but like I said, if they're delivering incredible work and if some of that was incentive-based, or the majority of it, I might have a different view on it. But it's not just that. The numbers of people, so many of these councils have 20 people on large six-figure salaries, including all sorts of roles that are basically fake jobs and are totally unnecessary and counterproductive, like DEI, etc. So absolutely, that is going to be something that we're going to look at. But we're going to have to look at everything. I really think this is an incredibly important mission. We've got some brilliant people, both in the Doge team and, of course, in these councils. But I'll tell you now, it will not be easy. There's going to be some explosive revelations that are going to come out in the coming days about stuff we've already found. But, the blob exists, right? And the system is so, let's call it, poisoned, as it were, in terms of how these contracts are awarded, how money is spent. Frankly, it's not even clear when you read these strategic reports from these councils. If anyone listening is suffering from insomnia, I thoroughly recommend trying to read one of those. It's a complete word salad. It's not even clear what these councils are even attempting to do. And yet, if you look at almost all of these councils, their budgets are anywhere between £750 million, in some cases £2 billion a year. There is no doubt, I think, we will find an awful lot which will make British people very, very angry. And our reform councillors are going to put a stop to the waste. Again, British taxpayers have been taken for mugs, and we're going to stand up for them.
And are you going to do something about, I think it's called the Asylum Seeker Support Scheme. This was a revelation came out about a couple of months ago, that in fact we've spent over the last, I think it's 5 or 6 years, something like £6 billion, providing asylum seekers, with video games, with trips out, driving lessons, as I just said, just basically giving them lots of presents and treats. £6 billion. Are you going to do something about that?
Well, I mean, I was looking at some of the examples yesterday: trampolining, cinema, all sorts of trampolining in Kent. This will be part of some of the stuff we're going to reveal. And listen, the reality is we're constant. This is the problem, right? That I think British people are sick and tired of politicians, the Uni Party, the Tories and Labour. When it comes to British people, well, they're always told there's no money left, right? If you're a pensioner and you've paid into the system your whole life and you had the gall to have a private pension at some point, the winter fuel allowance is taken away. You're being saturated with higher tax. There's always no money left, tough decisions to be made. When it comes to foreign citizens, infinite money, right? There's no number of people who've come across the channel by small boat who this government and the Tories were unwilling to put up for free. And by the way, I will also say, some of these whistleblowers are sharing information about, taxis, they're right by small boat, they're picked up, they're based in, and actually, in many cases, they get a complimentary ferry service in the middle of the channel, by Border Force. It's a complimentary service. They come to our shores. They're picked up in a free taxi at the taxpayer's expense. I'm not joking. They're taken to free hotel accommodation, then moved to other free short-term accommodation while they wait for their free long-term accommodation, all funded by people listening to this program who set their alarm clocks early in the morning and feel like they get poorer every single month. There's nothing about it that's remotely acceptable. So, of course, we've got to end all of that. And by the way, the root cause of that in many ways is the people who are here illegally. There's probably north of 1.2 million people here illegally in this country. We'll deport them when Nigel's the Prime Minister. Last question, Zia, just an overriding question, really. Reform UK has got a lot of momentum, did incredibly well in those local elections and, of course, the Runcorn by-election. Did pretty well in Hamilton up in Scotland last week as well. So, you are heading in the right direction. And more and more people are saying Nigel Farage really could be our next Prime Minister, with or without
probably without any help from the Tories. What do you as a party, how do you marshal this momentum? How do you keep it in check? And can Farage do it? If so, sort of in terms of the big picture, how does he do it?
Yeah, he definitely can do it. I'm very confident that he will do it. Look, it's not easy. We have assembled a political party virtually from scratch in about, just over a year. And look, we have decisively broken on May the 1st the stranglehold that two old parties have had on British politics for about a century. So nothing about this is easy. The air is going to get thinner. The establishment are going to come after us with everything that they've got as it starts to really sink in that a true alternative, patriotic political party who actually stand up for the interests of citizens of the United Kingdom, heaven forbid, in the House of Commons. As that starts to happen, things will only get harder. But we've got an amazing team. We've got an incredible leader, brilliant MPs, phenomenal members, volunteers, grassroots, and supporters. So I'm very confident we can do it, probably aided and abetted by the utter ineptitude, obviously, of this Labour government and the Labour cabinet. And also the fact that the Tories, I mean, look at the latest YouGov poll. They're down at 17%. The question, I think, for the Tories now is not can they return to 32%, but can they keep their heads above the Lib Dems? The Tories are headed for extinction, and I'm extremely optimistic. I believe Reform can form the next government. Nigel will be the next Prime Minister. And not just that, ultimately, that is not in itself the goal. The goal is to revive and revivify this great country, and that is a necessary step to do so.
Zia, fantastic to talk to you. All the best. Zia Yousaf there, the former Reform UK chairman who quit pretty dramatically last Thursday, wasn't it? And returned to the party over the weekend. He's now in charge of their efficiency drive. We're just talking about that, of course. And our own Dr. David Bull is now the new chairman of Reform UK. We wish him all the best. We're going to tearfully bid him farewell from this channel, from this station where he's been a star, and we wish him all the best. So let me know what you think about what Zia was just saying then, why he quit, why he came back, and all of those efficiencies as well, that if they can pull it off, they will save billions and billions of pounds. The amount of money that governments and local government waste is disgusting, actually. Anyway, let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. We'll go to break now. Your calls, your messages, your WhatsApp voice notes when we return.
I actually think the burqa should be banned. I think it is reprehensible in this country. I think anything that actually blocks communication is a barrier to communication and integration. I know this only too well, but living in East London as well, which is we've got silos of people who don't integrate. That is not how you build a great country. Now, that goes further. Nigel talked about this, about facial coverings, about crash helmets, for example, in public places. This is about law and order and safety, and also it's about having shared British values, and we need to make sure we do have that to build Britain back to being great.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. The Daily Telegraph, we're talking about Richard Hermer, Lord Hermer, the atrocious Attorney General, the Attorney General who hates this country. The Telegraph is reporting that this very same Richard Hermer, Keir Starmer's bosom buddy, his left-wing lawyer mate, his little chum, Hermer praised a mosque where the preacher urged Muslims to go and spit on Israel. The Attorney General called the work of Abdullah Quilliam of the Abdullah Quilliam Society inspiring, despite accusations it harboured hateful rhetoric in the wake of October the 7th. This is from Lorraine, actually, and she's saying, can you imagine if this abhorrent man was linked to the Tories? Starmer would have been apoplectic, demanding he was sacked. Starmer's hypocrisy is beyond appalling. The fact that Hermer is still in place simply highlights Starmer's true feelings. It does, Lorraine, exactly. When you look at Richard Hermer, that loathsome little hater of Britain, he hates this country, gave away the Chagos, represented Jerry Adams, praised a disgraced lawyer who told lies about British soldiers torturing Iraqis during the Iraq War, praised him, wonderful, wonderful, after he was disgraced. This guy hates Britain, and all you need to know is he's Keir Starmer's best friend. Great, isn't it? Robert Jenrick hit the nail on the head. He called him Jeremy Corbyn in a wig. That's exactly what he is. It's just a lunatic left-wing hater of this country. And he's our Attorney General, and he's our Attorney General that our pathetic Prime Minister went out of his way to ennoble so he could give him this job, so that this guy could endanger Britain with his ludicrous left-wing nonsense, giving away the Chagos Islands to China's best friend Mauritius. Thanks, Rich. Great work. Let's go to the phones. Let's talk to Mark in Lincolnshire. Hello, Mark.
Hello there, Kev, mate. How are you doing?
Mate, I'm good. Do you want to talk about the cat killer?
Yeah, I did, mate. As I said to your researcher, producer, whoever it was, answered the phone. This is kind of like one of those one things that really boils my you-know-what.
Me too. I often say this is a chink in my tough guy armour. I can't stand cruelty to animals. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't know why anyone would ever do it. You know, what have these creatures ever done to us? This piece of crap who did this to these poor cats. I mean, the fact that he got a 500 quid fine and walked free. I mean, well, that's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's absolutely scandalous. I mean, again, I kind of know why they do it. It's because they are psychologically warped. These are people, you know, they're doing this kind of thing to cats, dogs, wherever it is they're doing it to. I mean, he's only like 20 years old or something like that. It would not shock me if he's got a long history through childhood of hurting animals, because that's kind of the pattern. They're always quite similar, these people.
He's got a conviction also, Mike. He's got a conviction for domestic violence against the girlfriend whose cats he killed. So that girlfriend, her name is Molly Caitlin, I think, and she doesn't go out with him anymore. I'm surprised she did it ever at all. But
well, exactly, Kev. I mean, the thing for me is, again, I mean, as I said to them earlier when I rang up, it's kind of that one thing, like, you know what I'm saying, it's one thing that bothers me, you know what, but it's also that one thing that, you know, I've got 4 cats, Kev. If anybody hurt them, because they're like my kids, you know, that's how much I care about these guys, you know. They're defenseless, they rely on me completely, same as anybody with a dog, you know. If anybody hurt them, I would happily do jail time, Kev.
Yeah, to get them back. I know exactly what you mean. And, you know, people who don't have pets, you know, they sometimes have trouble getting in touch with our thoughts on this. But people who do have pets, I mean, they're like a member of the family, you know. People have, when I was a kid, you know, it was me, my brother, my sister, my mum, my dad, and always the dog. We'd always have a series, you know, we always had a dog, and that dog was an integral part of the family. In fact, the centre of the family probably got more attention than anyone else. So your animals, your pets become much loved members of your family. And that's why when I hear about a monster like this doing that to those poor little cats, it makes my heart bleed. I mean, it makes me furious. And what makes me even more furious is this absolutely moronic judge or recorder who said to him, "Oh, you should be ashamed of yourself. £500 fine." Come on. We should have a custodial system, a punishment system that tells the people of this country that if you do that to animals, if you beat animals around, beat them to death, you go to jail. In other words, we have a punitive system that sends people to jail for that kind of cruelty, the message being, don't do it. If all you get for systematically, he didn't do it in it was over, you know, weeks, and it just did it all the time to these poor animals until they were so beaten they just died. You know, what did he get for this? A £500 fine, and told by a recorder that he should be ashamed of himself. Well, you know, I just don't get that. We've got to do something about stopping people treating animals in this way.
Can I mention one other thing to you?
Yeah, sure, mate. Of course.
Totally unrelated, but you just mentioned Herma and Chagos.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Telegraph article that they put out 3 hours back?
You mean about I've literally just read it out about praising the mosque where the preacher urged Muslims to speak.
No.
Okay, all right. What's your one?
Sam, this is the Telegraph 3 hours ago.
Right.
Starmer's Chagos surrender will fund tax cut for Mauritians.
Oh, God. Honestly, what is going on, Mark? What is going on? It's like I said earlier to James Price, can you stop this mad world because I want to get off? Honestly. Mark, thank you for bringing that to my attention, I think. And good to talk to you as always. Mark in Lincolnshire there. Right, let's do a WhatsApp voice note, shall we? This is Anna on the cat killer.
Kev, I have a little cattery and I have 19 rescued cats. They're blind and disabled. Going to prison for a few weeks in this country it's pointless. He will spend his time in a cat-free facility, no doubt playing on his Xbox with a therapist. The best thing in the world that could happen for the cat's memory is to show his face everywhere and make sure that people know exactly what he did. That is the best punishment for him. Good luck facing the world, fella.
Yeah, Anna, I think you slightly misconstrued what the story was because you said he won't get he'll be playing around with his Xbox when he's in jail. No, you missed the point. He's not going to jail. He walked free. He got a £500 fine, I think a 15-month suspended sentence. Suspended sentences we should just get rid of. Suspended sentences are just letting people off. So effectively, for systematically beating these poor little kittens to death and almost killing a third, screaming in obscenities at them. The neighbours could hear these poor creatures howling in terror and agony. For that, he got a £500 fine. And what did the judge say? The recorder said, well, you know, I'm not going to put you in jail because that would cause distress to your family. Who cares? This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Let's talk to Georgina in London. It is time for Georgina. Hi, Georgina. How you doing?
Hi, I'm great, darling. I'd just like to say about the cat killer, I think if I'd have been the judge, I'd have sentenced him to 5 minutes in a cage with some big cats.
Yeah, with a lion. Yeah. A very short sentence for only 5 minutes.
Only 5
Unfortunately,
minutes.
you'll be sharing a cell with a cat, only this time a lion. Yeah, good idea. I like that idea.
Right, I've been listening to what's been going on with Keir Starmer, and I've got to say, I utterly despair with Keir Starmer. He is the mothership of the haters of Britain. He has the audacity to give speeches, Kevin, saying this country has become an island of strangers, when it's him who's wedged the door open to let the strangers in the first place.
Yeah, you're right. You're so right.
Honestly, and all this, whilst he hides behind the skirts of the ECHR, saying his hands are tied and we must adhere to the ECHR laws. Well, we'll never get economic stability whilst we have this tsunami of illegal immigration from France coming over. And if that makes me far right and I need therapy,
it doesn't make it. Yeah. That means you're adhering to a terrorist ideology. You may need de-radicalising, Georgina, according to our anti-terrorism unit Prevent. So watch out with that kind of speaking.
Well, I've never heard so much claptrap in my life, and I've been around a long time, let me tell you. As for France, it's got absolutely no intention of stopping these migrants, as they don't want them people there either. So they're happy to help them. They'll be helping them into the boats. We need to stop paying France for basically sitting on the bottoms and doing nothing. We need our own beach patrol unit, Kevin, funded by the money saved by not paying France. And we desperately need another Rwanda scheme as soon as possible. In an ideal world, I would love to have a new government who has the best intentions of this country and its people as its first priority, because if we don't do it soon, we are going to be in real trouble.
Absolutely. And going back to what you were saying about the ECHR, this is one of the many, many things that really annoys me about two-tier Keir. He's very fond of saying that for him, the ultimate in governing this country is the rule of law. The rule of law, the rule of international law. Yeah, but the thing is, Georgina, this is what we have to look at. That isn't what we vote for. When we vote for a government, we don't vote for a government that is going to be subordinate to some higher concept. We vote for the rule of the government we voted for. So for that government to come into power, and to be fair to Starmer, the Tories are just as bad as this. We vote for a government, and then they basically come into power, and the first thing they say is, well, don't look to me for the ultimate decisions. I'm only, second in command. This country is ruled by the rule of law, not the Prime Minister you voted for. That has got to change. The most important ruler of this country should be the government. I know with Labour that's a very unfortunate fact, but sadly they were democratically elected. The rule of this country should be the rule of government, not the rule of law, and certainly not the rule of international law. We've got to recalibrate this. We mustn't let Keir Starmer get away with his technocrat crap about the rule of law, the rule of law. No, we didn't vote for the rule of law. We voted for you, Starmer. We voted for your government. So for better or for worse, you're the ones who've got to rule, not subjugate yourself to some foreign court or even a British court.
We need a Prime Minister who doesn't change the laws to suit himself. And that's what we've got. We've got Lucy Connolly sitting in prison for a tweet. A mum who's got a child with special needs. And believe me, I know what that's like because I have a child with special needs. That child needs its mummy. And she's sat in prison because of a tweet. And you've got someone who has murdered animals, cold-blooded murder, and gets a £500 fine. Now, I'm sorry, Kevin, there's something seriously wrong here.
It's our judges, our hopeless, moronic, stupid judges.
Who rules the judges? Who rules the judges?
Well, no,
Debbie?
that is a very good point, Georgina, because nobody does. There is no system by which judges in this country can be judged. Who judges the judges? No one. There is no punishment system. There is no investigation system. They cannot be sacked. They cannot be castigated, they cannot be criticised, they cannot be investigated. They are above the law, if I can put it that way. It is ridiculous. We need to change it. We need to be able to sack our judges. We need judges to be worried about the people. We need judges to be frightened about the people, because we should be in charge of them. At the moment, we have no recourse to these people, and it's turning into a massive problem because they're a bunch of Guardian-reading left-wing morons. Georgina, on that bombshell, I better move on, but always a pleasure to talk to you. Georgina in London. You know, Georgina is on Talk more than most of the presenters, but she talks a lot of sense. It's always great to talk to her. Let's go to break. When we come back, more of your calls, more of your messages, and I think that's it for WhatsApp voice notes, but we're going to talk. It's good to talk on Talk. Stick around.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. What have we got here? This is from Debbie. If there are magical subterranean structures under the pyramids, then they must have been built by black people. Everything else seems to have been done by the African nation, according to recent history books. I think what Debbie's referring to is it was recently put forward that Stonehenge, the mysterious Stone Age structure on Salisbury Plain, was built by people of colour. There's no real evidence for that, but it sort of fits into a handy liberal Labour type socialist narrative, doesn't it? Diane Abbott and Labour people now are saying, you know, people are getting all worked up about migrants and the immigration issues. Migrants built this country. No, they didn't. Of course they didn't. Migrants didn't really start arriving till about 1950 or something. I think we had built a fairly successful country before that. So whenever liberals say, no, don't complain about migrants, built this country. Well, nothing against migrants, but they didn't build this country. Nonsense. Right, let's go to the phones. Let's talk to Susan in the New Forest. Hello, Susan.
Oh, hi there. You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. You want to talk about the cat killer?
Well, yes. It just occurred to me. I remember some years ago, I think his name was called Jeffrey Dahmer.
Jeffrey Dahmer, yeah, the notorious American serial killer. And I think what you're getting at is he started off killing cats, didn't he, and animals? Yeah.
Yeah, and then went on to consume them.
Yeah, it's a well-known sort of gateway to human murder, the kind of multiple murdering of animals, cat killing in particular. Psychopaths often sort of learn their serial killer trade by killing animals, and often future adult murderers, when they're kids, are inordinately cruel to animals.
Yes. Yes.
So that bloke, James Higginson, I'll guarantee you, don't forget, he's got a conviction for beating up his girlfriend for domestic violence already.
I don't know how old he is.
He's 20. He's 20. And he was 18 when he did this. And the judge said, oh, well, you got mental health issues and you were very young and your family will get all upset if I send you to jail for, say, 500 quid.
Oh, ridiculous.
Isn't it ridiculous?
Isn't it absolutely ridiculous?
It's insulting, I think, to the people of this country. We've got to start treating, in my view, that kind of animal cruelty. We treat it like a minor offence. 500 quid, off you go. Well, look, he systematically murdered those cats, beating them slowly every day after day with blunt instruments, just torturing them, killing them. If he did that to human beings, to people, they'd have thrown away the key. Now, I suppose I accept that if you're going to kill a cat, it's never going to be quite such a serious offence as killing a human, but it surely should be sort of vaguely in the same league. It's got to be worth a custodial sentence, not a 500 quid fine, like you just got done for speeding or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it shows your mindset, doesn't it? The way you think. It's that you can do that, a living thing.
Oh, yeah. No, this guy, James Higginson, we haven't heard the last of him. I guarantee you that next time he'll come back and he'll do something much, much worse. And it may be to a human. And when he does it, I hope that judge is hauled over the coals, but he probably won't be. Susan, very good point, and good call. Thank you for ringing. Susan in the New Forest there. Let's go to break, come back, more of your calls. Stay where you are.
I actually think the burqa should be banned. I think it is reprehensible in this country. I think anything that actually blocks communication is a barrier to communication and integration. I know this only too well, but living in East London as well.
On the pound, all sorts of nonsense, but she...
Silos of people. That is not how you build a great country. Now, that goes further. Nigel talked about this, about facial coverings, about crash helmets, for example, in public places. This is about law and order and safety, and also it's about having shared British values, and we need to make sure we do have that to build Britain back to being great.
The back doors of the aircraft were open.
Yeah.
If the gentleman was requested to use a toilet, which, because of how our human rights are and what we've got to abide by, then they would have allowed him to go.
Yeah.
But fundamental errors, because he was wearing a waist restraint belt.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Show's nearly over. Going to take a couple more calls, and then Petri Hoskin will be in the studio to let you know what she's got lined up for your delectation from 10 p.m. until 1 a.m. into the small hours. And then after that, 10 p.m., I'm nipping straight down to the House of Lords, because I think they've still got some of their LGBTQ pride crumble left. Crumble, apple crumble in the colours of pride. Rainbow colour, all dyed in the House of Lords restaurant. Why? What is going on? What's the point of that? The House of Lords. Grow up, you lot. It's pathetic. Right, let's go to Michelle in London. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for taking my call.
Pleasure.
Have you watched your programme yet, Snacked?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
Have you?
Yes, I have.
Good. Ain't you good looking?
I am very good looking in that, yeah. Well, I'm very good looking all the time, but particularly in Snatch. But thank you for that, Rec. It's good anyway. It's a good series.
Right.
Do Grace Scott, yeah.
I'm on a serious note now.
Yeah.
I am absolutely, it's made my blood pressure go up. If I could get hold of this bloke myself, I would do damage.
I think a lot of people, I mean, we mustn't...
Do not touch animals and children. Where in this country, in the world, have we lost the plot?
Yeah, well, I mean, we mustn't encourage those kind of thoughts, but I know exactly where you're coming from. This is the kind of crime when you see that snivelling little creep coming. He came out of court, and his mother was there with his mum, and he collapsed onto a bollard in tears of relief. And, you know, as I say, I mustn't encourage this, but...
where's these pictures? Where is these judge pictures?
The judge, I mean, you get a picture of him, but I mean, he made it. This is terrible. This is terrible. You can't, you know, we should punish that kind of crime fittingly. The punishment should fit the crime. And
it's
500
like killing a child or an old person.
500 quid for the systematic murder of 2 innocent creatures and torture. Nearly killed a third. 500 quid fine, that's just a disgrace. It's an
Do you know what, Kevin? I'll let you go, but I will say this. I'm not a religious person, but I swear on Almighty God and Muhammad and Allah that this man gets his comeuppance. You know, he's got to have retribution for this. You can't do this. It's disgusting. It's not normal.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, you know, hopefully he'll mend his ways, but I don't know if he will. He's already been convicted for beating up his girlfriend. Now he's killed these cats. He will commit violent crime again, Michelle, I guarantee you. Michelle, good to talk to you, as always. Thank you very much for calling. Michelle in London. Petri Hoskin will be in just a second. We were talking about these underground cities underneath the pyramids, these alleged underground cities underneath the pyramids. And Sarah from Belfast, I said that these columns were surrounded by artwork, kind of spiralling artwork. She's pointed out quite rightly that the theory is that they're not artwork, they're stairwells. So you could descend these enormous columns with these stairwells around these columns into these vast subterranean chambers, which they now think may have been connected all underneath all of the pyramids, and there was a kind of subterranean city. And in case you think that's all too far-fetched, there are several subterranean ancient cities in the world. So it's not an alien concept, it's not unknown. So who knows, underneath the pyramids were there cities beneath the sand. There you go. Now, Petri Hoskins is in the studio. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I hope you are too. I'm going to be talking about why birth rates are plummeting around the world. The United Nations has just issued a new report, and they're saying that actually the birth rates are plummeting everywhere around the world, apart from a couple of countries. And
I know to solve it. Just get Boris Johnson to go around the world.
Or Elon Musk.
You know, I mean, you know,
yeah.
both of whom have about 20 children a year.
Yeah,
they, you know?
exactly.
Yeah.
So that would solve it. There you go. Problem solved.
So Petri's got nothing to talk about now. We've solved that issue. Yeah, go on.
No, but also, why is it that people are choosing